Apocalypse. I can steal superpowers. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 576. False here. Zion. Since the World Rescue Association has been established, I will call you President from now on. GLUO couldn't help but smile when he saw Zinky Zion trying hard to be recognized. Although the eldest lady was only 18 years old, she was really very hardworking and very powerful. No, just call me Zion. We are friends, not just superiors and subordinates. Zinky Zion eagerly denied GLUO's words, and her expression was even serious and a little stubborn. GLUO was stunned for a moment. He nodded and stopped teasing her. Zion, you have been busy all night. Have you finished the personnel information? Do you need my help? GLUO felt that Zinky Zion was also amazing. She read the information one by one and tried to analyze the other party's position. 2,500 pieces of information. How long would it take to finish it? No, I have almost finished it. Zujdangsha actually had a general classification. I'm just confirming it now. But Zinky Zion seemed to have thought of something troublesome. She opened the tablet, turned to a form, and handed it to GLUO. This is. GLUO could tell that this was a simple list. The name of the first person was Emi Tachibana. Judging from the photo, she was a girl with a very cute smile. Emi Tachibana's profile was just a brief introduction, and there was nothing special about it. But what made GLUO feel strange was that her name was marked with a key point. And at the very end of Emi Tachibana's introduction, GLUO saw the 3 words missing. Similarly, going down the vertical row, the list was basically all missing, but some people were not marked, and some were. The missing list. Well, it's all the missing people, since Kikuchi Kango's reckless action. Although Hashizaki Erita knew that most of the people on the list were dead, she did not feel sentimental, but tried to find an answer from it. In the list, the ones marked with key numbers are people who did not participate in the operation but disappeared. They are likely to have been in trouble, and are most likely to have been betrayed. And those who are not specially marked all directly or indirectly participated in the entire activity, which means that each of them is suspected of being a traitor, and their disappearance is just running away. Of course, it is more likely that there is more than one traitor and spy. People related to these people should also be screened and paid attention to. At least when we select personnel, we should avoid them. Zinky Zion showed this list to GLUO, obviously asking him to try to avoid related people when selecting people next time. GLUO naturally had no reason to refuse. He looked through the entire list and actually saw a familiar name. Fang Nanan. This person should be part of the transaction between Kikuchi Kango and Furuba Fumio. He seems to be a frustrated genius and has the hope of becoming a good tool. However, at the end of Fang Nanan's information, it shows that he disappeared in the middle of the operation. There were traces of fighting at the place where he disappeared, and he might have been killed by the liquidator. There are quite a few people. Please sort out the relationship table and give it to me. I will pay attention to it when the time comes. GLUO took a rough look and didn't pay attention to it. He was not good at this, so he should leave it to professionals. Okay, Zinky Zion looked at GLUO's surrendered expression and took back the tablet. The girl had relaxed at this time. She lifted the blanket, adjusted her posture, and stepped on her white and tender feet in the slippers. Ding dong. At this time, Zinky Zion's mobile phone suddenly rang a reminder sound. The girl took out the mobile phone from her pocket and the expression on her face immediately became happy. GLUO. Zingruo woke up. Finally woke up. GLUO has always been quite worried about Zingruo. After all, she is the future Zingan, the one who was hostile to him, but also the partner he can reveal his true feelings to the most. Because GLUO was drunk and slept before, Zingruo was arranged to stay in Zinky Zion's room. She was upset when she read the information last night, so she wanted to change the environment and ran to the sky garden on the roof. As for Zingruo, Zinky Zion had always arranged for waiters to take care of her, but because they were worried about Xingruo's condition, GLUO and Xingqizilan walked very hurriedly. When the two opened the door and saw the awakened Long Lali, they were both stunned. In the light of dawn, the little girl who had just woken up was like a dream of melancholy in melancholy. She was about 1.2 meters tall and wore a one-piece pajamas printed with SpongeBob SquarePants, looking tender and cute. Her slightly developed breasts curled up in a small vest, her purple-blue hair hung on the sides of her shoulders. Her star-colored eyes were a little confused because of her morning mood, and her delicate and small facial features were gathered like the crystal and beauty of morning dew on grass leaves. Xingruo's skin revealed the luster of white jade, and every movement of hers produced different temperaments due to her different moods. She was ever changing, but as long as you were by her side, you could feel her pride and power in her bones. Xingruo, you're awake. Are you okay? Xingqizilan and Xingruo are very familiar with each other. As soon as she saw Xingruo wake up, she immediately rushed over, hugged the dragon Lali excitedly in her arms, and carefully examined her body. Zilan, sister. Xingruo looks like an 8-year-old human child, but as a cub of a star dragon, how could her appearance be the same age? Her familiarity with Xingqizilan made her very quiet, but she was a little hesitant about the name. Xingruo, are you feeling uncomfortable? Are you feeling uncomfortable? Xingqizilan had long been accustomed to Xingruo's slight alienation. This child is like this. She has been a little shy since she was a child. Except for her mother, few people can get close to her. Xingqizilan is already a rare sight. On the other side, GLUO looked at Xingqizilan's anxious look and walked into the room a little embarrassedly. He was curious about Xingruo's condition and also moved a little closer. But what GLUO didn't expect was that Xingruo suddenly turned her head and looked at him, her big watery eyes staring at GLUO as if she saw something interesting. Xingruo? Ah, this is GLUO. You have to call him brother. Xingqizilan was excited for a long time and finally calmed down at this time. She carried Xingruo to GLUO, thinking that at least Xingruo would get to know GLUO. However, what Xingqizilan never dreamed of was that when Xingruo saw GLUO, her eyes would never move away. She twisted in Xingqizilan's arms and actually opened her arms to GLUO. GLUO, brother. Yes, I'm GLUO. GLUO didn't expect that Xingruo would be so interested in him. When he faced Xingruo, who opened her hands to him, his heartbeat was a little happier. He was stunned for a few seconds before opening his hands and taking the Lali dragon from Xingqizilan. GLUO, brother. Chapter 577 Disease. Crossing Ruo's body was soft and young. When he held her in his arms, her skin felt like warm jade. Her body temperature was slightly lower than that of ordinary people, but it did not make people feel uncomfortable, but more comfortable. GLUO had hardly held a child before. She carefully held Long Lali in her arms. The delicate little girl stared at him, sniffed him gently, and smiled as pure as a lotus in full bloom. You are the same as me, from the same race. Crossing Ruo seemed to have slept for too long, so her reaction ability was a little slow, but her thinking ability was definitely not a problem. Haha. GLUO did not admit anything directly, but also smiled. The two people who looked at each other tacitly did not continue the discussion. Crossing Ruo's sleep should be a kind of protection from her mother, so the power in her blood has been sleeping. GLUO has been holding her, and there is nothing special about it. But now, when Crossing Ruo fully awakened, GLUO did feel a kind of blood intimacy. GLUO, who inherited Crossing Yan's blood, had the body of the star dragon. In a way, the current GLUO has gradually deviated from the human bloodline and gradually moved closer to the star dragon, and as his rank increased, this tendency became more and more obvious. The dragon race, a creature that conquers the sky and overlooks the earth, has the pride and power in their blood, so they rarely get close to other creatures. At this time, there are no people of the same race around Crossing Ruo. GLUO can be said to be the closest to her bloodline, so she will naturally get close to him. What's more, GLUO was once a star spirit with the power of immortality. Don't look at him always laughing and beating anyone. That's only now. GLUO, who will never die, will one day stand at the top of the living beings and return to his throne. Xingruo, are you hungry? GLUO hugged Lolly Dragon and naturally felt a kind of intimacy and closeness. The source power of the two people met on each other's body surface, and there was a kind of harmony. I'm hungry. Xingruo's big eyes flickered, and her voice was cute and soft, which made people want to pinch her. Okay, let's go eat. Xingzaki Zilan stood by and watched Xingruo and GLUO meet for the first time. She was so clingy to GLUO, and her expression was a little unwilling, but then GLUO looked over, and the two couldn't help laughing at the same time. At this moment, the entire hotel has been booked by Xingzaki Zilan. This hotel is a subsidiary of Huatang Group. It is said that the previous manager has been circling around Xingzaki Zilan, flattering him, and was ordered by Xingzaki Zilan to get out of the way. Such a luxurious international hotel serves GLUO and the other two. It is not an exaggeration to describe it as extremely luxurious, but Xingzaki Zilan is accustomed to it, highlighting that he regards money as dirt. GLUO, do you want to eat seafood? It is said that a lobster-type wild beast of level I bronze was airlifted in. It is of good quality and very fresh. Xingzaki Zilan sat elegantly at the dining table. The three of them chose a small table, so they sat very close to each other. However, this time they did not eat together like Chinese food, but used the Western way of eating separately. Whatever, I can eat anything. Xingruo, do you want to eat? To be honest, GLUO had never eaten wild beast meat, but he did not like seafood very much, so he was not so excited. Xingruo was very happy, showing a sweet smile, with cute dimples on her cheeks. Eat okay, just give me 3 steamed and sashimi, and add more chili for the side dishes. Xingzaki Zilan waved to the waiter, and the young and beautiful waiter immediately made a few requests, and then repeated the long menu. After getting Xingzaki Zilan's consent, she hurriedly left. Zilan, what have you done? Why are these people so afraid of you? As an old country bumpkin, GLUO didn't feel the restraint of having a big meal. At this time, he sat very casually, and Xingruo also imitated his posture, giggling at the same time. GLUO, sit down well, don't teach the little kid bad things. Xingruo will learn from you. Xingzaki Zilan gave GLUO a cute eye roll. GLUO turned his head and made a face at Xingruo. Long Lolly laughed even more happily, and her soft belly trembled. Sisters in iron, they are all afraid of you. Why are they afraid of me? They are all afraid of their superiors. Xingzaki Zilan didn't feel at all that she was already a devil in the hearts of others. Although she didn't manage Huatang Group, the elite education she received from childhood made her familiar with management and controlling people. Generally, if there is any situation, I will not look for the lowest level frontline employees. After all, it is the management position's job to manage them. If there is a problem with the frontline employees, it means that the management position has not taught or managed them well. The waiters are incompetent, so they should be dismissed. Since they are retained, it means that there is no problem with the personnel. Since there is no problem with the bottom level employees, but there is a problem, it is obviously a management problem. So I punish them all. As for those who tried to quibble, and those who use the pyramid theory, I kicked them out directly. Xingzaki Zilan's words were understated, but judging from the attitude of the people around her, it was obvious that she had made a drastic change in the hotel. As expected, you are a big lady, and your tone is arrogant. In GLUO's memory, he has always been a commoner. He has changed countless jobs, and he has never liked the boss and management. Don't like it? It's useless to dislike it. You will be the same as me in the future. Xingzaki Zilan heard the ridicule in GLUO's words, but she didn't care at all, just gave GLUO a look that you experience it yourself. Is that so? Then I have to use my years of management experience to better exploit the employees. Although GLUO said that he was standing on the capitalist's side, his expression was actually very calm. At this time, the waiter had already pushed the dining cart over, and it seemed that the meal was about to start. Xinyan, do you have any plans after dinner? No plans, but the previous plan can be implemented. So soon? Not so soon. Jiang Zilan said she could suppress everyone, and Zhu Dangsha hoped that it would be as soon as possible, lest Kikuchi Kango was doing something weird, and the night was long and dreams were many. Okay, then wait a while. GLUO decided Kikuchi Kango's fate lightly. In fact, the plan they mentioned was that they would go to the largest base of the rebel branch and start to take over and annex the entire organization. And this kind of airborne leadership is undoubtedly the most agitating thing for the subordinates. In order to suppress everyone, GLUO and Xingzaki will undoubtedly show their strength and strength. The strength of a strong dragon suppressing a local snake. Chapter 578 Absurdity. The coolness of the early morning did not dissipate with the passage of time. The dark clouds in the sky were not heavy, but a light rain seemed inevitable. When Jiangxilan created the rebel branch, she did not have the funds to build a base. Later, Ning Yiking funded her. She also started by gathering personnel. It took basically 3 or 4 years before she started to build the first comprehensive base. The site selection of the base was done by Zhuge Dangsha. Perhaps because of her capitalist character, the location of the entire base is actually located somewhere in the industrial zone, disguised as a company that produces children's toys. As the former leader, Jiangxilan specially called all the leaders in the base to go out to welcome GLUO and Xingzaki in order to build momentum for Xingzaki. So far, Jiangxilan has a total of about 2,500 people under his command, of which 800 can be trusted with peace of mind. Among them, the first batch of 300 people have been arranged to the third base, and the remaining 500 people were all selected when GLUO was drunk and asleep yesterday. At this time, the leadership of these 500 people has been handed over to Zhuge Dangsha. After Xingzaki confirms her position, she will lead Zhuge Dangsha and 500 people to the third base. In this way, there are 800 people in the third base. Jiangxilan means that all these people will be handed over to GLUO, who will form a new army. As for the remaining 1,700 people, there are actually more than 300 peripheral members. GLUO and the other 4 discussed and decided to try to treat them coldly and screen them temporarily. That is, all the people who have not clearly joined will be cut off from contact. After a while, after the entire World Salvation Association is established, they will be reviewed. In this way, the available force in Jiangxilan's hands is about 1,400 people, but Kakashi Kango has been dealt with, and the Dihad fans around him must also be screened out. Even though many people who are loyal to the resistance headquarters were buried because of Kakashi Kango's stupid plan, Kakashi Kango can still gather about 200 people. GLUO originally intended to directly dismiss these 200 people, while Zhuge Dangsha wanted to directly create a self-destruction attack. Jiangxilan certainly disagreed with Zhuge Dangsha's plan and was not very satisfied with GLUO's idea. After all, these people still knew the situation at the base. If they were dismissed rashly, it might lead to various information leaks. Of course, the rebels led by Jiangxilan before, except for the one that Zhuge Dangsha was in charge of, other places had long been like a sieve, and few people didn't know it. So, in the end, Xingzaki made a round and decided to promote a leader among these people and then send them to the second base for garrison. Anyway, the second base has already exposed its position, and the situation has long been known to everyone. It is also a good function to let them stand out in the open to attract attention. The 4 giants finally discussed and agreed to Xingzaki decision, so in the end, Jiangxilan's troops were about 1,200 people. GLUO, Xingzaki, how was it? I did a good job in the welcome ceremony, didn't I? Jiangxilan had a proud expression on her face, which embarrassed GLUO so much that he wanted to dig his toes into the ground. On the contrary, Xingzaki, as worthy of being a lady from a famous family, still maintained her elegance. Jiangxilan was really funny. She actually gathered all 1,700 people in the first base together and built a stage in the middle like a circular theater. Jiangxilan originally planned to go up first and announce the reorganization of the resistance army, and then let Xingzaki and GLUO go up and speak separately to transfer power. Such a stupid idea was only thought by Jiangxilan. Zhuge Dangsha now found a corner with 500 elites and was laughing so hard that she couldn't straighten her waist. So, a simple-minded person like Jiangxilan will give you countless surprises. Ha. Jiangxilan, we don't need to give a speech. There's no need to make such a big scene. Xingzaki never thought that Jiangxilan would avoid power so much. She just discussed it the day before yesterday, and she happily set up a big stage here, and decided to step down, and let others take over. There is no buffer at all. It's too hasty. Zinkizilan thought that it should be done bit by bit, slowly and gradually, so that people can accept it easily. Then, Jiang Zilan didn't know that she had done something bad with good intentions. Zhujiang was sincere in watching the show. She must have a solution, but it seemed that she wanted Jiang Zilan to take the initiative, to ask her for help. It's okay, I think this situation is pretty good. Jialuo suddenly interrupted the conversation between the two women. Jiang Zilan immediately cast a grateful look, and Zinkizilan asked with a little questioning. Look, this is a great opportunity. Let Kikuchi Kango admit defeat with conviction, and let everyone know what's going on. Jialuo straightened his collar, and in the shocked eyes of everyone, he walked directly to the center of the stage. Brothers and sisters, I'm honored to meet you here. My name is Jialuo. I'm a newcomer in your eyes, but I'm not really a newcomer. Jialuo didn't reveal his source power at this time, but since he was promoted to the 4th silver rank, the blood of the Star Dragon has made his appearance and temperament change dramatically. So at this time, even though Jialuo was standing alone on the stage, alone and unknown, no one dared to underestimate him. My fellow comrades, I'm just like you. I was born in an ordinary family and grew up in poverty, oppression, and prejudice. For more than 10 years, I have been on the road to pursue my dreams, but I have never found what I want, until I met the person who opened the door for me. Friends, a long time ago, you must have been like me, not knowing what you want to do, or what you can do, but now, we all know that this world should not be like this, and we must fight. Jialuo's voice suddenly became high-pitched. His voice was not excited, but the majesty and momentum of the dragon bloodline made everyone listen to his words at ease, very seriously. It's like a tiger lying in front of you, licking its bones leisurely. It just stares at you, without any intention of killing you, and you dare not move at all. Facing the strong, the characteristics of seeking benefits, and avoiding harm allow everyone to become humble. But we have to admit that, although the people in power in this world are corrupt, they are extremely powerful, so powerful that many people are forced to succumb to them out of fear. Jialuo suddenly pointed to the front of the stage, where a middle-aged man named Kikuchi Kango was looking at Jialuo with a frown on his face. Kikuchi Kango, come up. I think everyone needs your explanation. Chapter 579 Waiting for Dawn. From the moment he knew that his plan had failed, Kengo Kikuchi knew that he would be excluded and suppressed by Jiang Zilan and Zhujiang, and that he would have a hard time for a while. But Kengo Kikuchi did not expect that Jiang Zilan and Zhujiang would be so patient. On the first day they came back, they had been reorganizing the team and gathering authority. Kengo Kikuchi originally thought that Jiang Zilan was going to take control of the power and was ready to dismiss the people he had won over and lie dormant for a while. But what Kengo Kikuchi did not expect was that the people he organized were still following him intact, and Jiang Zilan did not accept these people he had won over. What's worse, those who just had a good relationship with Kengo Kikuchi were not reorganized by Jiang Zilan, but were stuffed into Kengo Kikuchi's place. Originally, Kengo Kikuchi, who was already short of manpower, once again had his own power and voice. Although he could not understand Jiang Zilan's plan, Kengo Kikuchi had already had some ideas. Unfortunately, Kikuchi Kengo did not have the ability to plan something similar to the Zuanwu Gate incident. What he wanted was to ask for help from the headquarters and ask them to send a real strong man to stabilize his position. However, before Kikuchi Kengo put this idea into action, Jiang Zilan's attack came. Kikuchi Kengo did not show an angry expression when Jialuo's insulting finger pointed at his nose. He walked to the stage step by step with a cold face and clenched teeth. Kikuchi Kengo knew very well that no matter what he had in the future, he had to go through this level. I don't know where Jiang Zilan found this young man named Jialuo, but now it seems that Jiang Zilan does not want to stand in person, but finds some cats and dogs to attack him and make him lose his prestige. However, how could Kikuchi Kengo sit and wait for death? He had already thought of a way to excuse himself, and all kinds of reasons were completely reasonable. With this confidence, Kikuchi Kengo was obviously the one on trial, but he showed a victorious attitude. He walked to the opposite side of GLUO with full momentum. This little brother named GLUO, I don't know where you come from, but I accept your doubts and attacks. Stop, shut up first. GLUO stood in front of Kikuchi Kengo and suddenly stretched out his hand to stop him from speaking, looking like a dog that was disgusted with barking. Kengo Kikuchi, what you think in your heart, only you know, but what you do, many people know. You must pay the price for what you do. Do you understand? I understand, but then grit your teeth and get ready. GLUO suddenly roared, and the sound like a dragon's roar scared Kikuchi Kengo. What do you want to do? Kengo Kikuchi, you saw your strength. I want to seek justice for all the dead comrades. GLUO's right hand suddenly drilled in, and the star-colored source power overflowed from his body. His pupils were flashing with the mist of source power, and his purple-blue gradient short hair seemed to be shining. 4th silver rank. Because Kengo Kikuchi was closest to GLUO, he could really feel GLUO's killing intent. Looking at GLUO's liquid source power like water, GLUO's rank was undoubtedly revealed. Mr. GLUO, you misunderstood. Kikuchi Kengo tried to calm GLUO down while exerting all his strength to activate the source power. As a warrior of blue steel rank, although he neglected martial arts, he was not an ordinary person. In a flash, Kengo Kikuchi turned his head and gave a look to the person behind him. Feeling Kengo Kikuchi's call for help, the man who had been standing behind Kengo Kikuchi also stepped forward. Everything happened in a few breaths. GLUO went on stage to speak and asked Kengo Kikuchi to come up. Then Kengo Kikuchi stepped on stage. GLUO interrupted his sophistry and released the source power without saying a word and was ready to take action. And Kikuchi Kengo, who was at the 3 blue steel level, also reacted quickly enough. He released his source power to protect himself and sent a signal to his deputy at the peak of the 3 blue steel level to come to support him. So, under the gaze of 1,700 people, GLUO, who intended to attack, just stepped forward and punched out with his right fist like a dragon. At that moment, Kikuchi Kengo hurriedly took 2 steps back. The sturdy man he regarded as his deputy blocked his chest, and the peak source power of the 3 blue steel level flowed out angrily. Stop. The sturdy man's source power had already shown signs of liquefaction. He only needed to absorb a source crystal to be promoted to the 4th silver level. However, the wild beast he wanted to use as a scourge was relatively rare and had not been transported yet, so he deliberately waited for a month before being promoted. In his opinion, the gap between him and the 4th silver level warrior was just a thin layer of paper which could be easily passed through. So at this time, he not only did not dodge GLUO's attack, but punched him. The sturdy man was already a prominent figure in the base. At this time, his full strength momentum shocked everyone. Although they knew that the young man named GLUO was a silver level warrior. But in the eyes of many people, GLUO, such a young warrior, should be suppressed by the sturdy man because he is not proficient in mastering and using power. Even if he can't be suppressed, he can be evenly matched, at most slightly inferior. Unfortunately, the evolution of things exceeded everyone's imagination. Even Jiang Zilan and Zhuge Dangsha didn't expect that GLUO would be so strong. Although Zinki Zilan had seen GLUO's battle, she couldn't estimate how high GLUO's combat power was because it ended too quickly. But at this moment, everyone's questions were answered and all judgments were completely crushed. Because when GLUO's fist moved forward, the sturdy man who was blocking GLUO was like a toddler, bumping into a running rhino head-on, and flew out instantly. That's right. He flew out without any resistance and completely crushed. The flame source power that the sturdy man was proud of was directly destroyed head-on. His right arm seemed to have turned into a broken matchstick. GLUO's fist shattered his arm, and finally left an imprint on his chest. As a result, the chest of this peak level 3 blue steel rank warrior collapsed directly, and his internal organs burst, and people could even faintly hear a slight sound. Bang! When the sturdy man fell to the ground, he had become a rag-like rotten doll, breathing intermittently, with only the most basic physiological twitching. You, Kikuchi Kengo was still thinking about cooperating with his deputy, dealing with GLUO, and even winning the battle, but at this moment, he looked at his deputy who was killed instantly on the ground, and his throat seemed to be stuck with something, and he couldn't speak. Or, Kikuchi Kengo, GLUO who didn't say anything at all. Ask someone to attack by surprise, it's not moral. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 580 Yearning. GLUO killed a peak level 3 blue steel rank warrior in one step. He walked without stopping and was in front of Kikuchi Kengo in the next second. He didn't give him a chance to speak and punched him directly. Kikuchi Kengo was so scared that his hair stood up. He didn't dare to fight GLUO at all. He just wanted to dodge, but GLUO was faster than him. Almost the next moment, when Kikuchi Kengo was about to escape, GLUO came up and punched him in the face, directly breaking up the source power protection around Kikuchi Kengo. Before smashing his head, he changed his fist into a palm and grabbed Kikuchi Kengo's throat. Kikuchi Kengo was pinched by the neck by GLUO and lifted up like a chicken. He used all his strength to try to pry GLUO's palm, but GLUO's knuckles were like iron pliers, holding him tightly. What was even more horrifying was that the water-based source power of Kikuchi Kengo kept trying to impact GLUO, but in the mutual annihilation of the source power confrontation, GLUO crushed Kikuchi Kengo's source power with absolute advantage. At this moment, the power displayed by GLUO was an absolute and thorough crushing. That invincible posture revealed a desperate tyranny in power. Kikuchi Kengo, you killed countless brothers and sisters for your own power. Now, you should apologize. GLUO deliberately allowed Kikuchi Kengo to struggle. Or 3 blue steel realm warrior really tried his best to survive. The sea blue water attributed source power kept trying to impact GLUO, but was easily crushed by GLUO. Kikuchi Kengo, when you get to that side, remember to apologize to them. The smile on GLUO's face was full of contempt and disdain. He looked at Kikuchi Kengo's ugly appearance of struggling to the limit and suddenly pinched him hard. Snap. A crackling sound rang out, and Kengo Kikuchi's cervical vertebrae instantly bent to an angle that normal people could not do. Then GLUO threw Kengo Kikuchi to the ground. At this time, Kengo Kikuchi was still alive. The vitality of a martial artist is very tenacious. He may die, but he will never die so quickly. However, GLUO did not give him so much time. Kengo Kikuchi, repent, not for others, but for yourself. GLUO raised his foot and stepped on Kengo Kikuchi's bent neck, just like twisting the neck of a rooster with a cut throat. Kengo Kikuchi, who was struggling, lost his voice in an instant, but the way he died was extremely creepy. My brothers and sisters, Kengo Kikuchi, as a person sent by the resistance headquarters, is bent on power and profit, abandoning our responsibilities, and using my blood to satisfy their desires. Damn it. GLUO moved his feet away from Kengo Kikuchi's body. He took 2 steps forward, his voice was like a roar, and his momentum was qualitatively different from before. At this time, GLUO was arrogant and overbearing, but facing the 2 corpses on the ground and GLUO's absolutely powerful performance, more than 1,700 people were silent. Now, I declare that we have officially left the hypocritical resistance army and established our own organization. We want to save the world, so we are the World Salvation Association. GLUO no longer concealed it at this time. The 4th silver level liquid source power, like a surging stream, flooded around him. The purple blue star source power exuded the breath of destroying everything, coupled with the momentum and suppression of the dragon bloodline. At this moment, GLUO was the king of everyone here. No one dared to disobey him, nor did they have the courage to question him. Now, let's vote. Who's in favor? Who's against? GLUO, with the momentum of killing Kikuchi Kengo, directly put forward his decision. A person who had been standing behind Kikuchi Kengo seemed to want to stand up and say something, but at that moment, GLUO looked over, and he instantly shrank back. No one was willing to stand up, because as they saw, whoever stood up would die. Some news. Jiang Zilan and Zhuge Dangsha had already told their selected people. Among more than 1,700 people, in fact, only more than 200 people who were close to Kakachikango didn't know what happened. However, these people were undoubtedly very smart. They all fell silent and chose to listen to GLUO. After all, Jiang Zilan and Zhuge Dangsha were right next to them, and neither of them interrupted, so no one was qualified to question these. Because they also agreed with GLUO's proposal. At this moment, everyone understood that leaving the resistance headquarters and establishing the World Salvation Association was not GLUO's own will, but a plan that Jiang Zilan and Zhuge Dangsha had planned. Very good, then it's settled. Now, we invite the first president of the World Rescue Association and the other two vice presidents besides me to the stage. GLUO was also thick-skinned. He didn't care what others thought and directly confirmed his identity as the vice president. Then Zinke Zinan, Jiang Zilan, and Zhuge Dangsha walked onto the stage and announced GLUO's decision. They all supported it. So, in the empty hall, under the gaze of more than 1,700 people, the World Rescue Association was officially established. Its first president and 3 vice presidents all passed silently. Those who chose to join the resistance army may have half-hearted people who wanted to get promoted and make money, but these people are very small. Most of them have a passion, or a deep hatred. Under Jiang Zilan's announcement, Zinke Zilan officially took office as the first president, and told everyone the story of her losing her best friends and relatives. Her will to fight was vividly demonstrated. When Zinke Zilan was giving a speech, GLUO stood quietly beside her, like a bodyguard protecting the leader. At this point, everyone understood that this young man with terrifying force was the closest person to their new president. It must be said that Jiang Zilan's original plan was just to have a ceremony and make it lively. But GLUO's entire promotion made everything go smoothly. There was no boiling frog in warm water, but only a quick cut of the Gordian knot. Relying on Jiang Zilan's prestige, those restlessness and resistance were suppressed, and the World Salvation Association was successfully established. Afterwards, the people in the first base were divided into 3 parts. Jiang Zilan selected 1,200 people to stay in the first base, and she was responsible for the army. More than 200 people went to the second base to take over the city defense and change the name of the organization. The first and second bases were all decided by Jiang Zilan. Of course, this was military power, and the financial power was always in the hands of Zinke Zinan. Zhuge Dangsha was responsible for the equipment, which was cast in the third base. Therefore, the last 500 elites were taken away by Zhuge Dangsha, GLUO and others, and evacuated to the third base together with the Shizuki Erita. Chapter 581 Burning. To this day, Jiang Zilan still doesn't know the exact location of the third base, because Zhuge Dangsha has always said that it has not been built yet, and it cannot be moved rashly. It must be protected and not disclosed. Of course, Zhuge Dangsha did not lie to Jiang Zilan. The third base is still under construction, but the location of the construction is very confusing. So, Zhuge Dangsha, you registered the most important base directly with the government, and disguised it as a security company? GLUO couldn't understand what Zhuge Dangsha's brain circuit was. He actually used capital to open a company, and turned the base into a large enterprise. Isn't this the best way to hide? Otherwise, building like this in the city will be suspected. Zhuge Dangsha didn't feel that he was courting death at all, or GLUO's impression was still in the order of the Earth world. The current Binchuan city is basically controlled by the Chibal, the government, and the Changshan group. The competition among the forces of all parties has made the whole city a mess. Normal supervision has long been gone. What Zhuge Dangsha did sounds like a fantasy, but in fact, in Binchuan city, all the mixed forces do this, so no one should be surprised. When the dynasty is at its end, rituals and music collapse, and management and laws are empty talk and meaningless. I think it's pretty good. Compared with GLUO's surprise, Zinke Zilan seemed very indifferent. At this time, the car stopped outside the construction site, and the 3 of them walked down together. It must be admitted that Zhuge Dangsha's arrangement is still somewhat reliable. In the name of building a security company, she used bribery to collect a large area of land in this place closest to the outer city. GLUO has seen the construction map of the entire third base. A large part of it is placed underground, or it means that the part on the surface is a cover-up, and the real part is all underground. This kind of underground project is bound to make a lot of noise, but Zhujiangxia is a great inventor, and many magical tools are really powerful. He successfully pushed the whole plan forward. Is the construction company reliable? GLUO looked at the endless construction site, and felt more and more that Zhujiangxia's powerful ability to make money. How many false accounts did she make, and how much money did she make? Looking at the area, this third base is probably bigger than the first base. I built a construction company myself. What do you think? Zhujiangxia proudly straightened her chest. GLUO turned his head and looked at her, a little doubting how much she wanted to make money, and infiltrated all walks of life. This base was built completely according to my ideas before. Now that you have joined, there must be some things that need to be changed. Let's discuss it together later. Can the design drawings be adjusted? Zinkizilan also knows a little about construction. If something is built according to the drawings and the drawings are improved halfway, the project will not be able to continue. Don't worry, I can do it. Zhujiangxia's attitude towards GLUO and Zinkizilan at this time was obviously different from before. Zinkizilan has now officially become her boss, and after seeing GLUO's strength, Zhujiangxia has obviously recognized GLUO. Okay, let's study it carefully later. How is the underground base? 300 people have already moved in. Can the remaining 500 people squeeze in? GLUO didn't have much sense of reality before, but now looking at the huge construction site in front of him, he suddenly felt the pleasure of building a secret base when he was a child, and he was excited anyway. It's okay to hold it, but those 300 people have been examined, and those 500 people may not all be sincere. I think they should be pulled to another place for training to temper their tempers first. Zhujiangxia has always been in charge of the economy. Although she doesn't care about personnel, she has also observed it. However, she can't be completely sure of these people's positions, so she can't rashly tell them about the third base. I agree. Let the Huatang Chamber of Commerce arrange the training location. The training of the resistance army is too loose. Zinkizilan turned her head at this time and waved to disperse the dust in front of her. She confirmed the construction of the base and didn't want to continue to eat dust. Okay. Zhujiangxia still had a faint smile on her face, not caring at all that Zinkizilan had grabbed the elite of 500 people in one sentence. Although these people were more convinced of Zhujiangxia than GLUO and the others. But when Zinkizilan took the people away and sent them to a secret place for polishing, without Zhujiangxia's presence, Zinkizilan should be able to control these people with a little kindness and power. Of course, Zhujiangxia didn't care about these. She just liked to study mechanical engineering, and making money was for the development of her interests. Now with Zinkizilan as the sponsor and GLUO as the thug, she was extremely happy. Dangxia, don't get me wrong. I plan to send these 500 people to the military base. First, they will undergo the most rigorous military training, and then they will be baptized on the battlefield, absorb the atmosphere of laxity, and cultivate discipline. During this period, GLUO and I will not intervene, and the leadership will be handed over to the original organization here. Zinkizilan did not have those intrigues, so she laid out the matter directly. Zhujiangxia was shocked by the girl's straightforwardness, and then smiled and nodded, without any more nonsense. Zinkizilan, GLUO, let's not eat dust here. Let's go. I will take you to the house I have chosen for you. Zhujiangxia didn't know why she smiled like a mischievous smile at this time. GLUO and Zinkizilan looked at each other and followed Zhujiangxia into the car. And this time, they did not travel a long distance. It took only a few minutes to arrive at a villa community. Judging from the architectural style and house conditions, it was obviously a home exclusively for the rich. The vehicle was not authenticated at the entrance, and the gate was opened directly. Then the car drove into the community, drove for a while in the dense greenery, and stopped in front of a brand new villa. Let's go. Let's take a look at your new home. Zhujiangxia got out of the car first and opened the door for Zinkizilan very attentively. GLUO followed and was immediately shocked by the luxury of the villa. Zoodanksha, how much is this house? Haha, don't mention money, it's so vulgar to mention money. This community was built by my construction company. This villa has been decorated and is waiting for its owner. Zoodanksha enthusiastically led GLUO and the others into the house. The iris electronic lock that opened the door shocked GLUO directly. Wow, this technology level is quite high. Danksha, you originally planned to live in this house yourself. Zinky Zilan walked into the house and saw the simple and generous decoration style and the subtle and technological appliances and saw the reason for this house. Chapter 582. It's okay. This one has been renovated. If you don't have a place to live, just live here. There are many villas in the community. I can just renovate one more. Zoodanksha, the leader of the rebellion, was very successful in the rebellion. Others rebelled and had to eat coarse food and risk their lives, but she became a capitalist without saying a word and was so happy that she was already in heaven. President Zinky's in iron. Don't refuse. This little thing is not worth pushing. Your sister's financial support to us only requires a fraction of the money to buy the entire community. How can I bargain with you? Well, okay. When Zinky's in iron heard Zoodanksha mention her sister, she knew that she had no reason to continue to pester her. Zoodanksha's impression of the investor was Zinky Zen, but Zinky Zilan knew that all of these were invested by Ning Yiking. Now it seems that Jiang Zilan and Zoodanksha are very likely the right-hand men that Ning Yiking left for Zoodanksha. It can be said that she was worried about him. Zinky Zilan, look, you live on the second floor and let GLUO live on the first floor. They will have their own private space and it will be very warm. Zoodanksha was testing GLUO as soon as she opened her mouth. Although she looked playful, there was no doubt that this was also a test of their relationship. GLUO and Zinky Zilan were completely innocent. He wanted to speak reflexively, but at this time, Zinky Zilan stopped him with a look. Danksha, thank you for your hard work. Zinky Zilan openly admitted her relationship with GLUO. It was obviously made up, but she acted as if it was natural and even made people wonder if all this was a pre-arranged script. She and GLUO had known each other for many years. It's not hard. As the president of the World Rescue Association, how can you not have someone to protect you? You can have a bodyguard outside, but at home, it's better to have someone who is close to you. Zoodanksha took a step back at this time and explained the relationship between GLUO and Zinky Zilan on her own. It was a bit like covering one's ears and stealing the bell, but it was indeed a step that allowed the two to land safely. You have considered it carefully. Here, I'm very satisfied. Zinky Zilan nodded and agreed to Zoodanksha's explanation. Then she looked at GLUO, as if asking him if he was satisfied with this place. Facing the girl's purple eyes, GLUO had nothing to say and could only nod. GLUO, it's good that you like it. It's not a big deal for us to live in the hotel now. Let's ask someone to clean it up later and move in tonight. Zinky Zilan was also decisive and moved in tonight. Zoodanksha was like a lackey and immediately said that she would clean it up in an hour. Only GLUO was left alone. Why does it feel like he was set up? The following time, Zoodanksha took Zinky Zilan to look around the house and introduced various tools to her. Zinky Zilan was like a bride with a new house. She was interested in everything, and the smile on her face never stopped. Of course, the three people's time was not wasted here. After looking at the house, Zoodanksha arranged for someone to clean it, and the three of them took a car back to the hotel. Crossing RUO was sleeping soundly again at this time, but this time she was not sleeping deeply. She probably hadn't reversed her sleep schedule yet, or it might be the residual influence from before. Without the cute dragon Lolly to hold him, GLUO felt that his life was a little bleak, but fortunately he didn't have time to be sentimental. Soon, the agenda of discussing the base began. Zoodanksha was a professional as a designer of the entire third base, and GLUO and Zinky Zilan were responsible for giving opinions and letting her try to modify it. So, the vigorous change of the drawings began. Zinky Zilan waved his pen and said that money was not a problem. Zinky really had 10 billion ready and could be pulled over at any time. Hearing this, Zoodanksha immediately rubbed her hands. Her mouth opened with excitement. Before, many things were not the best. She was distressed with money, so she screened for cost effectiveness. But now, she has money, so what else can she say? Just the best. You get what you pay for. The expensive ones may not be the most suitable, but they must be the best. GLUO finally saw what the world of the rich is like on this day. Zinky Zilan moved her mouth a few times and doubled the budget of the entire base, doubled the floor area, and prepared all kinds of weapons, even missiles. GLUO doubted that, if ballistic missiles were not too big and not conducive to transportation, Zinky Zilan would have done it. Anyway, GLUO has seen through it. This country, this world, is really rotten. The army is rotten, and the officials are rotten. The strength of the Wu-Tang group is indeed terrifying. GLUO thought it was a large company with hundreds of billions before, but now it seems that even trillions can't stop it. After all, that was a star spirit from another world. The person named Ning Yiking was a top scientist who had never been seen before or since. Many of her research and inventions were epoch-making. How could the group she founded not make money? Although most of them were hidden under the water, they were definitely powerful. If Ning Yiking hadn't brought almost all of her assets to kill the desolate god, the current Zinky Zilan might have had the confidence to directly destroy Binchuan City. Unfortunately, the desolate god was too terrifying. There was no if. GLUO made some suggestions on the base, based on his understanding of various games. Zhujiangxia implemented them one by one, and the budget increased by about 150 million. However, Zinky Zilan simply said that the underground base should add a second underground floor, at least 100 meters underground, and set up a secret evacuation passage. This sentence increased the budget by more than 2 billion, and this was based on the conditions of Zhujiangxia's super energy machinery. In the end, after a full 5 hours of discussion, during which the three of them had a meal, they finally came up with a charter for the expansion of the base. Zinky Zilan invested about 5 billion yuan to completely optimize the original third base into what she imagined. Zinky Zilan was very satisfied, and Zhujiangxia was very capable. Zhujiangxia was also very satisfied, because Zinky Zilan was really rich and generous. Only GLUO, sitting next to them, listened to the two discussing spending money and transformation, and deeply felt the evil of capitalism. But in the end, GLUO only needs to work hard for Zinky Zilan to enjoy all this for free, and think about it. Of course, it is also possible that GLUO lost a lot. But fortunately, everything is voluntary, there is no coercion, and there is no need to do this. Anyway, when it gets dark, the villa is ready, and Zinky Zen also called, and the military base where the 500 people are going is also ready. Tonight, break up the hole, and get ready to start the good luck. Everything is so fast and terrifying. Chapter 583 Return to Normal. GLUO, who has always been lazy and a homebody, has been completely busy since he took office as the vice president of the World Rescue Association. The World Rescue Association led by Zinky Zilan is not a playful organization with a 100,000 yuan investment by GLUO. After Jiang Zilan's rectification and Zhujiangxia's screening, the actual number of people in the entire World Rescue Association is 2083. Everyone's information is in Zinky Zilan's hands. GLUO can look at it any time he wants, and everyone is clear at a glance. The first base, Jiang Zilan, is stationed and commanded with 1,200 people, a Legion combat template. The second base, Kasei Naoki, is stationed and commanded with about 200 people, a guerrilla warfare template, an abandoned bridgehead. The third base, Zhujiangxia, is stationed and commanded with a total of 300 people, a special operations template, temporarily responsible for defending the base under construction. The other 500 people were pulled to a military base for training, and they will have to go to the battlefield in the future. As the leader, Zinky Zilan and his vice president moved into a brand new villa, integrating and pruning this huge organization every day. The sequel of the snake swallowing an elephant is obviously not something that can be achieved in a short period of time. Now the combat effectiveness of the entire organization has not increased but decreased, and it can even be said to be the weakest time. Of course, there will be problems with people's hearts floating in the reorganization, but with Zinky Zen's 10 billion arriving, and a lot of money being thrown out, the floating hearts of people immediately stabilized. After all, who doesn't like money? Not to mention that it's a lot of money. Anyway, Zinke Zilan is rich and powerful. 5 billion was given to Zhujiangxia to build and expand the third base, and the remaining 5 billion was not stingy, and he spent a lot of money. Recently, GLUO was the person in charge of accounting. He looked at the string of numbers of the payment and felt that his blood pressure was rising. My goodness, this is money. Don't you feel bad when you spend millions and tens of millions? Facts have proved that Zinke Zilan really doesn't feel bad, because after she took over and completed the entire organization, Zinke Zen sent another 10 billion and the accounts were instantly loose. Huatang Group is really rich. Ning Yiking, the god forever. GLUO even thought that if there was no Huanga and Shenming, Ning Yiking would really be able to unify the world, because her foresight and wisdom were really too strong. As a star spirit, little GLUO is an absolute force. With the power of the zodiac, he can be as high as a god in the sky, and Ning Yiking is the king of mankind. Her greatest invention is the armament, which is the only tool that humans can hope to cross to Changshan. It's a pity that Ning Yiking died. Even if Zhujiangxia got most of her inheritance, she couldn't make it. Technology is like mathematics. If you don't know it, you really don't know it. It's impossible to answer the correct answer. A few days ago, Zinke Zen handed over part of Ning Yiking's scientific and technological information to Zinke Zilan, who then handed it over to Zhujiangxia. Zhujiangxia was completely obsessed with it from the moment she saw the information. Zhujiangxia's worship of Ning Yiking has changed to a lofty admiration. She continued to study, but she felt the gap between the two more and more. Zhujiangxia no longer seeks to create a perfect armed device. She just wants to copy it one part at a time. Anyway, now Zhujiangxia is completely conquered by Ning Yiking's technology. She goes into the laboratory every day and stays there all day long, like a madman. Jiang Zilan has also been working hard recently. So many of her subordinates have died, and she wants to seek revenge on the liquidator. Moreover, the resistance headquarters also knew about the betrayal of the Bunchuan city branch, and sent 10 letters in a row, but unfortunately, all of them were thrown into the trash by Zinke Zilan. In the end, the letter changed from asking, comforting, advising, and threatening to declaring war. And Zinke Zilan's reply was also very simple. If you want to fight, then fight, but please remember that you have a lot of information about me, and I also have a lot of information about you. We have known each other for so many years. If you want to lose both sides and perish together, then come. After that, the resistance headquarters was at peace. Everyone knows that the retaliation of the rebels will always come, but this can be regarded as motivation and supervision. Anyway, Jiang Zilan has a sense of crisis. The 1,200 people are no longer as lax as before, and they start training and assessment every day. Everyone feels different. The sense of crisis is spreading. The smoke of war seems to have drifted to the doorstep. After the money is paid, no one says what they shouldn't say. The current training is for them to survive on the battlefield, so no one dares to perfunctorily, and no one dares to give up. Everything is starting to be different, just like a thunder that falls, chopping down the dead wood, and the flames burn with it. But after the flames go out, there are new buds in the ashes, stretching their waists. Jiang Zilan is busy with training, Zhujiangxia is busy analyzing Ning Yiking's legacy, and Zinke Zilan is busy commanding the overall situation. GLUO, who manages the economy part-time, has also become Zinke Zilan's secretary and the steward of the entire World Salvation Association. He has become a revolutionary brick, moving wherever he is needed. It was really tiring. It was not something a human could do, but fortunately GLUO was not a normal person, and he had the lovely crossing RUO to hold and recharge. Well, replenishing crossing RUO's energy, full of vitality. In the heat of midsummer, GLUO was busy and toiling, and he did not feel the comfort of being in power, but was full of troubles. Fortunately, it was not long before a heavy rain fell in Hamakura city. After the rain, the sky was clear and beautiful. In the Russian toil, a month passed in a flash, and GLUO went from being lazy at first, to being extremely eager to be lazy. It's just a pity that he was drafted by Zinke Erita, and now he is almost inseparable from Zinke Erita, and the two are like conjoined twins. No, it's not just two people. Crossing Ruo Longlali has now resumed her normal routine. She is now like the child of the two, being taken around everywhere. Zinky Erita has changed his car from the previous luxury car to the current RV. When the two are working, Zingruo is placed in the car to play games by herself and experience the pleasure of bullying others. Well, Zinky Erita was afraid that she would be bullied, so he spent a lot of money on Zingruo while playing games. He was as rich as a coal boss. Zingruo was very happy. She played online games silently every day. She felt that she had reached the peak of her life and did not need to destroy mankind. Of course, GLUO also mentioned Zingruo's education to Zinky Erita, but Zinky Erita did not care at all and even laughed at GLUO for worrying about nothing. Although Zingruo looks like an 8-year-old dragon lali, her lifespan is estimated to be at least more than 100 years. Her mother has taught her a lot of knowledge. GLUO, don't worry about Zingruo's affairs. Instead, we are in big trouble. Chapter 584 Indulgence. GLUO always kept his distance from the word trouble because he was a lazy person without the motivation to strive for progress. He would avoid trouble if he could. However, the existence of big troubles would really make people anxious and exhausted. They would not kill people, but they would disgust you. If you ignore them, they would become more serious. If you ignore them, it would be another hard work. So, what big trouble is it? GLUO lazily lay on the sofa in the RV, holding Crossing Ruo Lolly, who was playing mobile games, in his arms, replenishing Crossing Ruo's energy like a pervert. Long Lolly seemed to have changed her game recently, from a game that could bring happiness by charging money to a single player game with the plot as the main theme, and she was having a lot of fun. It's a problem with arms. Crossing Keys and Yan seemed to be a little irritable. She took out a paper document and handed it to GLUO. Now that society is in turmoil, various organizations are flocking to Binshuan City. The fighting in the outer city is intensifying, but at the same time, the arms business is getting better and better. The arms market in Binshuan City was previously a loose organization, but later, these arms dealers gathered together and formed an organization called the Spark Guild to ensure their own safety. Before, the rebels were distributed on this side, and the arms had always been traded with the Spark Guild. The price was fair and the orders were always fine. But a few days ago, the Spark Guild suddenly asked for a price increase, and even tore up the previous orders. Zinky Zilan's face was not very good, so GLUO didn't dare to joke. He roughly scanned the documents and frowned. As we all know, most of the profitable businesses in this world are put into punishment, and the arms business, which is a highly profitable business, is also a symbol of violence and death. Decades ago, the underground arms in Binshuan City was still a mess. At that time, each company could control the arms dealers of all sizes, but when they united to form the Spark Guild, it was difficult to cut the cake randomly. The current president of the Spark Guild, Qianhe Lengling, is actually a girl of 18 or 19 years old. What's more terrifying is that from her appearance, she looks like a legal lali. Although Qianhe Lengling looks easy to bully, her series of actions are really cruel. Her mother was the previous president, but she died in another attack. She was still a high school student at the time, and she dropped out of school to take over the family business. She defeated a hangman feast and killed all the elders who wanted to usurp the throne. Then she cleaned up the internal affairs, causing at least 3,000 deaths. It is said that in those days, Binshuan City did not hear the sound of gunfire for 24 hours, which was simply crazy. Qianhe Lengling is naturally not an ordinary person to be able to do all this. Her specific rank cannot be estimated, but she has the title of Veil of the Brahma Heart. Veil of the Brahma Heart Qianhe Lengling. This person has planned it long ago. GLUO finished reading the entire document and basically had a conclusion about the outline of the whole thing. To be honest, Qianhe Lengling, or the Spark Guild, treated Jiang Zilan very well before. The quality of the weapons was very good, the price was fair, and the order was shipped very quickly. It was not an exaggeration to give it a 5-star rating. However, secretly, Qianhe Lengling was also doing some small moves. From all sources, it was shown that she intended to get involved in the Binshuan branch of the resistance army, just like Zinky Zilan, to annex the entire organization. Therefore, the benefits given by Kai and her Lengling were basically malicious plans, and she had great ambitions. Of course, this was not to blame others. In this world, the weak are the prey of the strong. There were many factions within the resistance army, and everyone knew that they were fighting for power and profit. Kai Lengling saw through this situation, and probably thought that Jiang Zilan would definitely not stop, and would leave the resistance army. She thought very well, but she didn't expect that her seductive eyes were thrown to a fool. Jiang Zilan and Zhu Dangshan never thought about joining the Spark Guild, but directly sold themselves to the big money owners in Zilan. Kai Lengling was furious when she heard the news. She supported the rebel branch so much, just to merge it into her own army, but Jiang Zilan turned around and recognized the enemy as her father. Who could tolerate this? So you see, it has only been a few days, and Kai Lengling's revenge has come. First, she tore up the previous arms order, and then directly raised the price. It was ugly. The Spark Guild is trying to get the skin of a tiger. Can they use other channels? Luo could imagine with his eyes closed what the negotiations with the Spark Guild would be like. It would not be an exaggeration to say that a war would break out. No, the Spark Guild has said hello. No one in Binshuan City dares to sell arms to us. Zinki Zilan's mood is not right, or it can be said that she has always been calm and composed, but today she is unexpectedly irritable, as if she has encountered something that is difficult. We, the World Rescue Association, cannot have anything to do with the Huatang group. It's best not to have even a little bit of communication. So, for things like arms, we can only rely on ourselves. Then, the only way out is negotiation. Luo hadn't understood the whole thing yet, so he didn't make any rash judgments. What he said was undoubtedly asking crossing keys in Yan's plan, and the girl didn't hesitate and nodded directly. I still have some understanding of Kai and Lengling. As long as there is an exchange of interests, she can agree. Xinyan, do you know this Kai and Lengling? Luo didn't think about it at first, but looking at crossing keys in Yan's irritable expression, Luo suddenly had an answer. The two girls were about the same age, and their families were either rich or noble. In such a small city like Binshan, the best aristocratic school must be their common choice. She was my high school classmate. Crossing keys in Yan obviously didn't want to talk about this. After Luo had a general idea in his mind, he nodded and agreed, and didn't mention it anymore. Afterwards, the two discussed the specific process of the negotiation, the equivalents that both parties could trade, and the impact after the hostility. Anyway, Luo saw that Zinki Zilan was not shy about the negotiation, but she was definitely not going there with the intention of groveling. Once the other party opened her mouth, Zinki Zilan would definitely fight back. For Zinki Zilan, money can be earned again, but if face is lost, it is completely gone. She is the eldest daughter of Huatang Group, and is the leader of a small organization. She can lose money, but she must not lose face. Therefore, Zinki Zilan sent a very harsh letter to the Spark Guild in front of Luo. Those who knew it thought it was a negotiation, and those who didn't know thought it was an appointment for a fight. In the next few days, the development of the matter made Luo confused. The Spark Guild first replied to the letter, sternly rejected Zinki Zilan's application for negotiation, and also ridiculed it in every way. How could Zinki Zilan be a person who took the reply letter directly and took Luo to block people the next day? That was a real blockade. Chapter 585. Don't forget. Zilan, is it really okay to do this? Luo looked at the girl beside him cautiously. His voice was softer and weaker than usual, but Zinki Zilan, with a cold face, sat on the chair at this time, with a murderous look in her eyes. It's okay. Anyway, he is not a good person. Zinki Zilan held a knife and fork in her hand, and the way she cut the cake was like she was decomposing someone's body. In short, it was extremely low pressure. Luo looked around and confirmed that there were no dangerous people in the cake shop. Then he refocused his attention on the private club opposite. Yesterday, the Spark Guild gave Zinki Zilan a reply. The wording in the letter was embarrassing and could be said to be very excessive. Zinki Zilan, who had never suffered such an insult, naturally exploded completely. As the eldest daughter of Huatang Group, a proud daughter of heaven, Could she tolerate such an insult? So, the next day, Zingzaki Zilan determined the location of Kyan Huilengling. Today, Kyan Huilengling is going to meet a big client. The agreed time is coming soon. Kyan Huilengling should have entered the club through the secret passage long ago, and is now waiting for the guests. Private clubs are invitation only. You can't enter without an invitation. The proud Zingzaki Zilan will certainly not choose to break in with shame. She will take out an invitation and go in with dignity. As for where the invitation comes from, it comes from wherever there is one. That person is here. Gluo bowed his head and said to Zingzaki Zilan. The girl nodded and buried her head to continue eating the cake. At this time, Gluo stood up, wearing a slim casual suit, looking like a big brother next door, or a good student who ranks among the top in the school. However, this inherent impression was soon broken. At the other end of the long street, a luxurious car like a small armored vehicle drove in. It maintained a uniform speed, neither fast nor slow. Similarly, Gluo also walked calmly. He walked out of the cake shop and crossed the street without paying any attention to traffic rules. In the end, he stood in the middle of the road. Opposite, a luxury car drove over. The two guards in front of the club obviously noticed Gluo's abnormality at this time. They looked at each other and just pulled out the weapons at their waists, but did not shoot immediately. On the other side, the tycoon who was to meet Kyan Huilengling was sitting in the car. The driver reported to him and then began to slow down. Unfortunately, his concession did not exchange for Gluo's giving up. At that moment, Gluo ran like lightning. He did not dodge or avoid the front. The source of star-colored energy surged with the uppercut, and the heavy vehicle was directly lifted up with the front of the car as the node. The modified car weighed nearly 3 tons. Gluo, who was alone, went forward alone. With just one blow, he smashed the front of the car into pieces. The whole car was like a turtle with its shell turned over, with only 4 wheels facing the sky, spinning uselessly. It's easier than I thought. Gluo walked to the heavy bulletproof glass of the car and punched it through. Then he pulled hard and the thin door was opened. Who are you? In the car, the realm warrior who served as a guard leaned over and got out. Gluo met him and hit him with his head. The powerful star source power directly blew away his source power protection. Then Gluo hit his forehead on the other's head and knocked him unconscious. Blue steel level? Not bad. Gluo threw the bodyguard with an annual salary of tens of millions to the ground. The tycoon who Kyan Huilengling was meeting was looking at him with a gloomy face, holding a gun in his hand, but without opening the safety. Who are you? My name is Gluo, the vice president of the World Salvation Association. If you want revenge, come, but now, give me the invitation in your hand. Gluo hooked his hand like calling a dog. The middle-aged man was stunned for a moment, and then immediately understood what Gluo meant. He took out the invitation from his pocket, and handed it to Gluo with both hands. World Rescue Association, I will remember you. Then remember it well, and make me happy enough. Gluo took the invitation away casually, turned around and started to walk back. Gluo did not comment on Zingzaki Zilan's plan, and let her do what she wanted. If the World Rescue Association wants to gain a foothold in Hamakura City, it cannot rely on this ridiculous name. What is really useful is to show its own strength. In many cases, there is only a thin line between hatred and fear. This line is called life and death. Under the lead-colored clouds, Zingzaki Zilan walked out of the cake shop. She walked gracefully and almost at the same time as Gluo. She walked to the door of the club. President. Gluo reached out and handed the invitation to Zingzaki Zilan. Zingzaki Zilan flipped it open and took a look, then stepped forward and threw the invitation to the security guard. Gluo leaned over and followed behind Zingzaki Zilan. The 2 security guards held guns in their hands and took the invitation thrown by Zingzaki Zilan. In the end, they did not dare to move. After Gluo and the others entered the door, they quickly notified their superiors. Gluo, are you nervous? Zingzaki Zilan's walking manner is very beautiful. Long-term etiquette and family education make her elegant, even when she is casual, not to mention at this solemn moment. As for Gluo, he is really casual, but the increasingly strong dragon blood aura on Gluo makes him look arrogant in his leisure, and no one dares to underestimate him. Zilan, Don't worry about me. When fighting, you just need to take care of yourself. I just hope the G-Sang in your hand is really that powerful. At least, I have no problem protecting myself. Zinky Zilan obviously has strong confidence in Ningya King's only relic, and Shan Zhi Jan G-Sang is indeed qualified. GLUO and Zinky Zilan's random walking did not last long. Soon someone came over and naturally led the way for the two. Ms. Zinky Zilan, Mr. GLUO, please come this way. Zinky Zilan nodded and said nothing. GLUO looked around randomly and followed the guide to the door of a private room. Ms. Kyan Hilengling is inside. Please come in. The guide knocked on the door and then pushed it open carefully. Zinky Zilan and GLUO walked in slowly and saw Kyan Hilengling inside at first sight. Normal people probably couldn't imagine that Kyan Hilengling, known as the curtain of the heart of Brahma, looked like a little girl of 13 or 14 years old. She was just over 1 meter and 40 tall, sitting on a large sofa, with a pretty face with a tense expression, giving people the illusion of pretending to be mature. However, there is no doubt that when GLUO saw her for the first time, he could be sure that she was the curtain of the heart of Brahma Kyan Hilengling, the Queen of Arms and the current president of the Spark Guild. With ruthless tactics, she gathered together the scattered arms dealers and carved out a name and prestige for herself in the unruly Spark Guild. Chapter 586, Development. Zinky Zilan, I really didn't expect that we would meet again under such circumstances. How many years have we not seen each other? Kyan Hilengling looked like a naive junior high school student. She sat casually on the sofa, with a teasing smile in her wine-red eyes. I'm very happy that my invitation was safely delivered to you. Really? That's really gratifying. As soon as Zinky Zilan saw Kyan Hilengling, the coldness on her body emanated. She leaned over and sat on the sofa opposite Kyan Hilengling, sitting opposite her. GLUO walked behind Zinky Zilan and stood beside him at ease, very professional and silent. This is Mr. GLUO. He looks really extraordinary. Kyan Hilengling raised her head and looked at GLUO unscrupulously. GLUO didn't care and let her spy on him. On the contrary, Zinky Zilan had already begun to clench his teeth. Just an ordinary person. GLUO simply replied with 4 words and finally stopped talking. He closed his eyes slightly, and it seemed that he didn't even want to look at Kyan Hilengling for a second. He 4th silver rank realm warriors are not cabbages that can be found everywhere on the street, not to mention that you are not an ordinary 4th silver rank. Kyan Hilengling was not angry at the attitude expressed by GLUO, or rather, she was always very tolerant of capable people, and the idea of Kyan Hilengling coveting GLUO finally made Zinky Zilan unbearable. The girl patted her back and sat down. Her eyes looked murderous. Kyan Hilengling, what on earth do you want to do by writing that letter and irritating me to come here? What? Didn't you take the initiative to come to me? Kyan Hilengling tilted her head, looking quite cute, but it was a pity that her little tiger teeth were exposed when she smiled, giving people a sense of danger like a young tiger. Kyan Hilengling, I warn you, the Binchuan branch of the Resistance Army has left the Resistance Army and joined my command. It is now the World Saving Association. Oh, is that so? So what? Kyan Hilengling's sarcastic tone was very infuriating. GLUO stood quietly beside her, like a wooden man, and did not intervene in the conversation between the two. Zinky Zilan did not curse at Kyan Hilengling. She stared at Kyan Hilengling coldly. After a few seconds, she took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and opened them for a long time. Kyan Hilengling, I have to admit that you are still so annoying after so many years. Oh, I'm also honored to let Miss Zinky Zilan remember me for so many years. Although Kyan Hilengling was still foul-mouthed at this time, her tone was no longer as disgusting as before. It seemed that she softened after Zinky Zilan changed her attitude. Kyan Hilengling, the past is over. I don't want to dwell on right or wrong, nor do I want to reminisce about the past. I came here just to discuss a deal. What deal? Kyan Hilengling looked at the water cup in front of her and tapped lightly on the wall of the cup with her fingers, causing the water in the cup to continuously vibrate and create ripples. I have invested a lot of effort in Jiangzilan. All the previous transactions I gave her were friendly prices. Now that she has changed her mind, I have no reason to support her so much. Can't the price be a little higher? It's your decision how much the goods should be sold for, but it's my decision what to buy them with. Zingzaki Zilan and Kyan Hulengling were tit for tat and neither of them would give in. As the seller, Kyan Hulengling could sell at any price she wanted, but Zingzaki Zilan could decide not to buy, and could also decide what to buy it with. Oh, Miss Zinki Zilan, what do you want to use as a discount? I'm quite envious of your Huatang Group's metallurgical technology. Kyan Hulengling's offer was outrageous. It was directly the core secret of the Huatang Group. Of course, she definitely didn't think that the deal would be successful. She just asked for a high price and paid it back. Kyan Hulengling, the affairs of the Huatang Group have nothing to do with me now. I became independent because I want to do something. Zinki Zilan took out a document from her handbag and threw it directly in front of Kyan Hulengling. She seemed to have made up her mind. Kyan Hulengling, I heard that the Changshan Group has recently been involved in the arms business, and many of your subordinates have been directly recruited. The source crystal weapon they have recently researched seems to be very popular. This is. Kyan Hulengling had an indifferent attitude before, but when she saw the information thrown by Zinki Zilan, she immediately became serious. Are the technical indicators of your source crystal weapon true? Of course, although our Huatang Group does not involve weapon manufacturing, the level of source energy inscription technology is the world's top. Zinki Zilan had a triumphant smile on her face and directly switched positions with Kyan Hulengling, becoming her fearless. Kyan Hulengling, technology is the primary productive force. This source crystal weapon will allow your Spark Guild to regain the most important arms market and firmly take the lead. In the future, there will be unlimited possibilities. As long as the technical indicators of this weapon are fine, I'm willing to cooperate. As the leader of a large force, Kyan Hulengling may have personal emotions to decide things, but it is definitely not the time that will affect the foundation of the force. Recently, the commercial competition between the Spark Guild and the Changshan Group has shown signs of fatigue. In terms of traditional gunpowder weapons, the Spark Guild undoubtedly occupies the top position. However, the Spark Guild's advancement speed in the source crystal weapons that have just emerged in recent years is very worrying. The only product it has produced is not competitive and is suppressed by the Changshan Group. Now the market is shrinking seriously. Because of this incident, many people who opposed her in the Spark Guild were making outrageous remarks, and even many fence sitters directly switched to the Changshan Group. And the source crystal weapon that Zinki Zilan called out was obviously better than the Changshan Group's flagship product, and it would definitely seize the market. Tell me, Zinki Zilan, how much do you want? No, I don't need money. I'm not interested in money. What I want is cooperation. Zinki Zilan showed her dagger and directly turned this source crystal weapon worth hundreds of millions into free. As we all know, free things are often the most expensive. Cooperation? Zinki Zilan, this is not your character. What do you want to do? I want the Changshan Group to die. Zinki Zilan did not hide her inner hatred at all. Kyan Hulengling looked at her expression, frowned, closed her eyes and thought. For nearly 10 minutes, no one in the room spoke. When Kyan Hulengling opened her eyes, everything was settled. I agree to cooperate. I estimate the value of all the information on this source crystal weapon to be 1 billion. I will deliver it to you in the form of a weapon. All that. Cost price. Well, it's a pleasure to cooperate with you. It's time for me to leave. Zinki Zilan changed the topic quickly. She just said goodbye after a pleasant cooperation, then stood up decisively and led Gluo out of the door. In the room, Kyan Hulengling looked at Zinki Zilan's back as she left and smiled unconsciously on her face. Zinki Zilan, you really haven't changed at all. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 587 Born Here. From the day when the World Rescue Association and the Spark Guild reached a cooperation, all plans gradually got on track. Days passed one by one, and a month seemed to be gone in the blink of an eye. Mori saw a 298 August 3rd 6:16 I don't know when, GLUO's lazy biological clock disappeared. When the sky was slightly brighter, he got up and walked into the large kitchen of nearly 100 square meters. As a traveler, GLUO usually immerses his mind in cooking when he feels that his body is empty so that his mind will calm down. When the sky was slightly brighter, Zinky Zilan and Crossing RUO did not get up. GLUO took out some chicken wings and cola from the refrigerator and decided to make the simplest cola chicken wings. It is not suitable to eat greasy food in the morning. The cola chicken wings dish can even be made without oil, so it is relatively suitable. GLUO washed the chicken wings, squeezed out the water with his hands, and then marinated it in a slightly larger basin. Crossing RUO lolly always eats a lot, so it is necessary to make more. After preparing the cola chicken wings, GLUO hesitated for a moment and decided to make some millet porridge. Simple rice porridge is easy to make, and you can add a little alkali to it. This is the secret of the sticky and bright rice porridge in the restaurant. However, alkali will destroy nutrition. Although it looks good and tastes good, it still has disadvantages compared to the porridge cooked slowly over a low fire. As for the staple food, GLUO did not do anything too strenuous. For a simple egg pancake, the most important thing is to blend the noodles and eggs. The control of the heat is also the most important point to pay attention to in this dish. When GLUO was busy in the kitchen, the door of a room opened with a click, and the sleepy girl walked towards the kitchen while combing her hair. Zinky Zilan obviously still didn't get enough sleep, but she has adapted to this time to get up. After all, she is not the eldest lady she used to be, and she has a lot of things to do. GLUO? Zinky Zilan heard the sound from the kitchen and instantly thought of who it was. She pushed open the door of the kitchen and saw GLUO busy inside. Hashizaki Nagao, good morning good morning. The girl was stunned for a moment, then nodded. She looked at GLUO's familiar appearance in the kitchen and couldn't help but smile. GLUO, is there anything I can help with? Then please help me stir the millet porridge. Okay. Zinzaki Shinagao was obviously very happy about GLUO's attitude of not minding giving her the task. She walked to the pot of rice porridge, picked up a long spoon, and began to stir it gently clockwise. Looking at the golden porridge, Zinzaki Shinagao suddenly remembered her life when she first lived in the school. Although it was a separate on-campus apartment, she had no worries about food and clothing since she was a child. During that time, she was really stupid, especially at the beginning of her life. Everything was not going well. As a big lady who had everything she wanted, she knew nothing about housework and even had the embarrassing incident of not washing clothes. At that time, a skirt she particularly liked was full of the smell of laundry detergent. In the end, she thought it was hopeless and threw it away directly. Compared to housework, that can be learned easily. Cooking is even more terrifying. Because she knew nothing about cooking, Zinky Zilan ate takiat almost every day at that time. But after school every day, she would still stubbornly try making black charcoal and weird tasting food every day, and finally had to feed the trash can. Thinking about learning step by step, trying step by step, and now finally being able to make satisfactory food, Zinky Zilan feels that she has suffered more in cooking than in studying. But now thinking about it, these hardships have become the persistence of the past. Cooking, which once made her feel physically and mentally exhausted, has also become a very interesting thing. It's really a very wonderful thing. Thinking of the past, Zinky Zilan couldn't help but smile. What are you laughing at? Do you want to drink porridge so much? No, I just remembered the past. The past? GLUO gently flipped the chicken wings and the cola with a spatula and looked over with some curiosity. Well, it's just a feeling. Time is really a wonderful thing. People are also quite interesting. All physical experiences will leave traces, and the soul will also reflect these things. We seem to be forgetting our past selves, but in fact, we are just becoming our true selves. Zinky Zilan gently stirred the rice porridge with a sigh and a little warmth. What you said is too profound. I don't quite understand it, but I think that life changes us, and we change life. GLUO covered the pot with a lid and blinked at Zinky Zilan. The two smiled at each other and seemed to have a tacit understanding. Click. At this time, the sound of opening the door sounded again outside. Obviously, Xingruo had already gotten up. What are you eating today? Long Lali, who hadn't even changed her pajamas, opened the door with a long yawn and began to care about today's breakfast. It's a secret now. You have to wash up and change clothes before I can tell you, Xingruo. You look like a little lunatic now. You're really ugly, huh? Stupid brother. Xingruo puffed her lips, made a face, and turned to the bathroom. In the kitchen, Gluo and Xingqizian smiled at each other, and the two continued to prepare breakfast. There was no collision between them. The morning sun spread out, and thousands of households in the world began their own stories at this moment in this house. 3 different identities, the fate that should not have been intertwined together. The morning sun outside was like a scorching world. The chicken wings came out of the pot. The sticky golden rice porridge was scooped into the bowl. The egg pancake was soft and crispy, and the 3 of them sat at the table, eating breakfast in a slight chat. Later, the doorbell rang, and Xingruo opened the door for her, while biting the egg pancake, and the oily chicken wings covered her lip line. Every morning is so peaceful. After Zhujiangxia arrived, crossing Ruo also sped up her eating speed, and changed her clothes in a hurry. Not long after, crossing Ruo waved goodbye to Gluo and crossing Qizinyan, and was happily taken out by Zhujiangxia. In the past few days, crossing Ruo was picked up by Zhujiangxia every day, and came back very late every night, and she was still happy to do it, and I don't know what kind of evil things she did. Gluo knew that Zhujiangxia was very interested in crossing Ruo, a growing star dragon, but he also believed that Zhujiangxia knew her limits. After dinner, crossing Qizinyan, who said yesterday that she would go out early today, did not leave home. She sat on the sofa, holding a tablet, and kept looking through some information. Gluo originally planned to go as a supervisor at the new base under construction, but seeing crossing Qizinyan like this, he did not leave. And the matter did not surprise Gluo. After sitting for a while with a frown on her face, crossing Qizinyan asked Gluo to go with her to see Qianhua Lengling again. According to the latest information obtained from the investigation, the deputy of the underground arms queen of Hamakura City is named Takashi Sake. He once had contact with Zheng Bi, and is very likely one of the culprits behind the abduction of Ningxinan. Chapter 588 Admiration. Knock, knock, knock. Come in. Inside the headquarters of the Spark Guild, the girl sitting on the white chair called out softly, and then continued to look at the paper in her hand. The leather chair was exquisitely and luxuriously made, and paired with the huge horizontal table in front and other decorations in the room, it looked quite noble. However, the girl sitting on the chair was small in stature, and she should have sat in a rather dignified posture, but she ended up curling her whole body in the chair, which made the room decoration look much closer. President, I asked other members of the 4th hunting group, and they didn't find any unusual behavior from Ishiwatari Hibiki. The young man named Sake Takashi walked in from the door, and placed his inquiry record on the table. Qianhua Lengling looked down at the paper, without even the intention of looking closely, and just glanced at a few lines of words, before retracting her gaze. The first report submitted said that the target wild beast was a pack of grassland wolves led by a 3rd level wild wolf, with a total of about 200 grassland wolves, and no mutants. Sake Takashi, do you think there will be casualties when a team led by a 3rd level blue steel warrior and 22nd level black iron warriors face such a weak wild beast group? Qianhua Lengling tapped the paper on the table with her tiny fingers, with an inexplicable coldness in her expression. The 4th hunting team, recent casualty statistics, a total of 5 missions. 3 times there were 1 or 2 personnel loss. The first 2 wild beasts were strong, so it's understandable. This time there were casualties in the grassland wolf pack. He said he was careless in command. That team member was too careless. Careless? I think it was Ishido Xiangsheng who was careless. Does he think everyone else is stupid? Qianhua Lengling raised his hand and took out another document from the drawer and threw it in front of Sake Takashi. This is. Sake Takashi picked up the document and looked at it carefully, and his brows slowly frowned. The whereabouts of all the bodies of the casualties are unknown. Heh. It seems that some people have forgotten that I can kill people too. Qianhua Lengling slowly leaned back on the chair, closed her eyes, and tapped her fingers lightly on the leather. As a gathering place for humans, Bunchuan City would of course have wild beasts appearing nearby due to the presence of too many humans. However, as early as the establishment of Bunchuan City, all the powerful wild beasts around were killed and driven away. Now, the occasional ones are some weak and gregarious wild beasts, or some medium-sized wild beasts that cannot find food, and are therefore starving. Regular daily patrols and the task of destroying wild beasts naturally fell into the hands of the hunting organization. As a member of the organization, the Spark Guild naturally also took on the task of a region. And these teams responsible for daily patrols and the elimination of small monster groups are the hunting teams. After all, the hunting teams are the teams on the front line of the battle. It can be said that they are all the elites of various organizations, and actual combat with wild beasts is also the best nutrient for people to grow. According to the regulations, the hunting team composed of realm warriors is allowed to take action only when the probability of victory is at least 80%. If the probability is lower than this value, the hunting team must return to report to the city garrison army, and they will clean up the wild beasts. However, the 4th hunting team of the Spark Guild has suffered casualties in 3 of the last 5 missions. All the dead realm warriors were taken away by the wild beasts, and no bones were left afterwards. This has inevitably caused Kyan Hilengling's anger and suspicion. You know, these 5 missions were only within 2 months, but 5 people died. This number of casualties can be said to be the casualties of other organizations in a year, or even lower than this number. Call Aishido Xiangsheng over. I have something to ask him. Kyan Hilengling didn't think for too long. She sat up in the chair again, with no joy or sadness on her face. Understood. Sake Takashi bowed and turned to walk out of the room. It's been dark behind the mountain for a long time. Kyan Hilengling raised her hand and picked up the information she had finished reading. She put the first paper to the back one by one. She seemed to be looking for information in the information, but in the end she didn't find any flaws. Many people used to wonder why a pseudo-lolly who looked like a 13 or 14-year-old girl could become the president of the Spark Guild, until someone angered her. That day, all those who questioned Kyan Hilengling saw her power. From then on, no one dared to easily step within 10 meters of her, and no one dared to face her power directly. But today, a person whose shadow remained in this guild seemed to still show her a sarcastic smile. Just when Kyan Hilengling was thinking about something, the door of the room was knocked again. Kyan Hilengling said come in, and a young man in black armed uniform walked in. President. Shidu Xiangsheng's figure looks particularly tall and straight. As a realm warrior, physical strength is definitely the strongest point. However, on this young man, there is no sense of muscle expansion, only a very strong and upright feeling. After Shidu Xiangsheng walked in, he bowed to Kyan Hilengling very respectfully, and then directly admitted his fault. I'm sorry, I made a mistake in my decision making during this hunting of wild beasts. I'm willing to be punished. Shidu Xiangsheng. Kyan Hilengling's seemingly weak body sat in the chair, raised his dark eyes, and looked at the young man in front of him who seemed to be very respectful to him. Facing Kyan Hilengling's gaze, Shidu Xiangsheng looked at the ground a little uneasily, obviously not wanting to look at Kyan Hilengling. I remember that you have been in the Spark Guild for 5 years. Yes, President. I was fortunate to be admitted to the Spark Guild 5 years ago. Aishido Xiangsheng was obviously very curious why Kyan Hilengling brought this up, but he just answered the question and didn't say anything else. I remember that when Shan Hao Jihuan was still the president, you joined the 4th hunting group and were later promoted to team leader by him. Then came my mother, and then me. If we use the analogy of the past dynasties, you can be regarded as a veteran of 3 dynasties. However, the reason you can stay in this position is not because of these qualifications, but you have indeed been doing very well. I have seen your previous records. As the leader of the 4th hunting group, you have maintained a record of 0 casualties for 3 years, but this honor only lasted until March of this year, which was more than a month ago. Since that casualty, in the 4 subsequent missions, 1 or 2 personnel were lost in 2 missions. Chapter 589 here and there. Kyan Hilengling tapped the report on the table with her fingers. Shidu Xiangsheng was startled and said again that it was his own mistake and he was willing to be punished. However, Qian Huilengling did not show that she wanted to punish Shidu Xiangsheng. She stared at him and suddenly said something inexplicable. I didn't expect. Shanhao Jiayuyan is really not dead. At that moment, when Qian Huilengling mentioned Shanhao Jiayuyan's name, Shidu Xiangsheng's body suddenly trembled and his eyes were full of disbelief. I didn't expect that Shanhao Jiayuyan was really not dead. Qian Huilengling said this sentence too confidently, as if she already knew that this was the fact and just repeated it again. President. After a moment of shock, Shidu Xiangsheng suddenly restrained his expression, but at this time he already understood that he was too stupid. The reason why Qian Huilengling said it so confidently just now is probably not because she really knew that Shanhao Jiayuyan was not dead. Instead, it is very likely that he is deceiving me, but because I have something to hide, I actually showed such a panic expression. It's over. President, what jokes are you talking about? President Shanhao Jiayuyan has been dead for a long time. How could he still be alive? Shidu Xiangsheng already felt the danger in his heart. He wanted to get away with it, but even he knew that Qian Huilengling would not let him go easily. I really didn't expect that he was not dead and dared not to hide far away. Qian Huilengling sighed, as if she didn't hear the words that Shidu Xiangsheng tried to cover up. In fact, to be honest, I don't have much contact with Shanhao Jiayuyan. I can't say I hate him or like him, but he was a well-known figure in the past, and I actually know a lot of things. It is precisely because I have known him that I don't want to bring up the past. But, President. Shidu Xiangsheng heard that Qian Huilengling didn't ask him any more questions, but instead whispered these seemingly irrelevant words, which made him even more frightened. He lowered his head and didn't even dare to look at Qian Huilengling. After my mother died in the attack, I got this position by chance. I was unfamiliar with the place, and it was difficult to carry out all kinds of work, not to mention the transfer of personnel. So, I have actually been using the people at that time, and the few people who were close to Shanhao Jiayuyan. I didn't touch you because he died. Qian Huilengling inexplicably recounted the past. She left the white chair, walked around the table in front of her, and stood not far from Shidu Xiangsheng. President. As a warrior of the 3 blue steel rank, Shidu Xiangsheng can be said to have reached a dream realm that ordinary people can never reach in their lifetime. In front of any peers, Shidu Xiangsheng maintained his strong side, but at this time, in front of Qian Huilengling, who looked like a 14 or 15-year-old girl, he seemed to be so scared that he wanted to flee. But the fact is, he didn't even dare to flee. Shidu Xiangsheng, although I didn't move you at that time, in fact, after my position was already stable, I made a lot of adjustments to the previous people. Only you, because you have always done a good job and are very popular with the team members. So, after consideration, I didn't move you, so I gave him a chance. Qian Huilengling frowned, as if regretting her previous choice. At this time, Qian Huilengling clearly did not show any strong side, but she seemed to give Shidu Xiangsheng an indescribable pressure. Finally, Shidu Xiangsheng finally couldn't bear it anymore. He raised his sweaty face and seemed to cry. President. I really didn't want to. It was Shanhao Jiayuyan. Shanhao Jiayuyan he. Sure enough, everything was done by Shanhao Jiayuyan. Listening to Shidu Xiangsheng's confession, Qian Huilengling showed a cold smile on his face. At this time, Shidu Xiangsheng finally understood that Qian Huilengling actually knew nothing. In fact, he didn't even know whether it was him who did it. It only took a few words to blow up his old bottom. Shidu Xiangsheng, are you wondering why I would use Shanhao Jiayuyan to trick you? Qian Huilengling took a step forward and was only half a step away from Shidu Xiangsheng. Shidu Xiangsheng leaned back uncomfortably, trying not to get close to Qian Huilengling, but he didn't dare to move his feet. Because, my mother told me that if you guys have any abnormalities one day, then Shanhao Jiayuyan will definitely show its tail. Shidu Xiangsheng's eyes suddenly widened, looking at Qian Huilengling in disbelief. In fact, he has always been very curious why Qian Huilengling moved all the other leaders of the hunting group, but only him. Before, he was proud to think that it was because he did well enough, so he had been working harder to do better. But until this moment, Shidu Xiangsheng realized that it turned out that everything was just a joke. From the very beginning, the reason why Kainhua Lengling didn't change him was not because of how well he did, but she had been playing the long game to catch the big fish. Actually, Shidu Xiangsheng was completely confused at this time. He didn't expect that he had worked so hard for so long, but all his efforts were meaningless. Damn it. Shidu Xiangsheng clenched his fists suddenly, and the red flame source power spread from his body with his roar. It seemed that he was going to burst out all his strength and fight to the death. However, at this moment, Kainhua Lengling took a step back and looked directly into Shidu Xiangsheng's eyes. At that moment, it was as if the spiritual power of substance surged out of Kainhua Lengling's body, and her long hair fluttered. Although she was so short, she made people feel the terrible power of a giant. A mere warrior of the three blue steel realm dared to attack me. Kainhua Lengling's lips opened slightly, and it should have been a very small voice, but it seemed to be amplified 100 times by a loudspeaker, and instantly resounded in all places around half a kilometer. Shidu Xiangsheng, you are really courting death. At that moment, the invisible and intangible spirit drowned Shidu Xiangsheng like a raging wave, and the source power surging from his body seemed to be broken by pieces of broken glass, with no ability to resist. A moment later, the spiritual power that rushed straight to the sky exploded, and everyone in the entire Spark Guild felt the terrible power at that moment. At that moment, everyone lowered their heads in fear, as if someone was looking down at them from the sky. This is the president of the Spark Guild, the Brahma Heart Curtain, the queen who cannot be disobeyed, Kainhua Lengling. Chapter 590 Cleanup. Mental power is an invisible and intangible force. It can exist nowhere, but can appear anywhere. At that moment, Kainhua Lengling's right hand was clenched forward, and Shidu Xiangsheng's body seemed to be imprisoned in a small coffin. He tried to struggle with all his strength, but it was meaningless. Shidu Xiangsheng, who was fixed tightly, looked like a mosquito sealed in resin. The vast mental power of invisible matter wrapped him, leaving him no power to resist. Kainhua Lengling stared at him coldly. Her pupils had turned completely pure white, and flashed with the light of butterfly feathers. She raised her palm lightly, and Shidu Xiangsheng's body slowly rose into the air with the movement of her palm. Shidu Xiangsheng, I can even tolerate you serving Shan Haojiuan, but you are willing to sacrifice your partners for his purpose. I don't know what kind of pain they will endure, but I promise, you will die in pain. Just like that year, Kainhua Lengling had just taken the position of the president of the Spark Guild, and faced what those who provoked her did. At this moment, Kainhua Lengling slowly clenched her palms, and as she moved, the mental cage that imprisoned Shidu Xiangsheng began to shrink. That look even reminded people of the scene of a black hole collapsing. At that moment, Shidu Xiangsheng's limbs seemed to be squeezed by endless pressure. His limbs were instantly crushed, his flesh shrank, and blood gushed out, but they were wrapped by mental power. Then, Shidu Xiangsheng's muscles were crushed, and his bones were shattered into dust, but the power continued. It looked like a human being crushed by a steamroller. Shidu Xiangsheng's limbs went from intact to thin and shrunken, but then, the thin and shrunken limbs were pressed into his chest and waist by mental power. Large mouthfuls of blood gushed out of Shidu Xiangsheng's mouth, but mental power was like an ice-covered coffin, freezing everything about him inside. Kainhua Lengling's palm finally clenched into a fist, and the pressure turned into a twisting and rotating squeezing force. Aishiwatari Hibaki's whole body seemed like a piece of melted, but square chocolate that was thrown into milk and then spun wildly. The centrifugal force of this rotation instantly tore the whole piece of chocolate into thousands of pieces at different levels. A moment later, Aishiwatari Hibaki completely disappeared in the air, leaving only a fist-sized ball of blood and flesh. Scum. Kainhua Lengling's face was still cold. She waved her hand, and the ball of blood and flesh flew out in the air, and fell accurately into the opened plastic bag. President, do you want to check the scene right now? At some point, a man named Sake Takashi was already standing at the door. He held a bag in his hand and accurately collected Aishiwatari Hibaki's body. It's useless. I think you know better than me that Shan Haojiuan is not the kind of person who would leave any small tales. How could there be a simple mistake in something he has planned for a long time? After killing to vent her anger, Kyan Huilengling had completely returned to normal. She sat back in her seat with a blank expression, as if she had never killed anyone just now, but just killed a bug. To be honest, I really miss my mother now. With her around, it seems that everyone is an idiot. If she faces Shan Haojiuan, she will definitely be able to come up with a solution immediately and then simply get rid of him. Kyan Huilengling's expression improved a lot after she sat back in her seat. Her fingers tapped the leather lightly, and there was some nostalgia in her expression. It's really troublesome. From the beginning to the end, I didn't want to be an enemy of anyone, but blindly giving in will only cause trouble everywhere. Listening to Kyan Huilengling's familiar muttering, Sake Takashi didn't say anything. He waited until Kyan Huilengling finished muttering before speaking again. President, we can't just ignore the matter of Yamago Hisane. We must ensure the safety of the hunting group. I will lead the team myself. With my familiarity with Yamago Hisane, I shouldn't fall for her trick. No, although Sake Takashi was obviously the best solution for the current situation, Kyan Huilengling actually smiled and shook her head. She stood up, walked to the window, and looked down at the vast and beautiful Hamakura city. Yamago Hisane was able to escape death in the hands of the government. He must have something to rely on. Back then, he crossed the red line of the gang and forced the government to suppress him. If it was someone else, he would definitely die. I suspect that Yamago Hisane is supported by a big shot in the government. Even if we prepare something in advance, we will eventually be forced to some pressure and will not get any satisfactory answer. So, we have to hand this matter over to others. If there is a force in this city that remains neutral and low-key and has a good relationship with us and can deepen cooperation, what should we do? Rebels? Sake Takashi frowned and thought for a while and got the answer instantly. I'll go find them. No need. Kyan Huilengling's smile was somewhat mysterious, as if she had already prepared something. Since I know that Shan Haojiuan may exist, how can I not do anything? If the people from the World Salvation Association come to find you, don't explain anything, just bring them to me. After such a long time, I didn't expect that I could still chat with her peacefully. It's really like meeting old friends, and it makes people feel like the information from childhood. Kyan Huilengling's fingers gently slid across the French window. She looked a bit like a star on the cover of a magazine, but the mysterious temperament she had was something that no one else could have. Okay, I'll arrange everything right away. Sake Takashi bowed to Kyan Huilengling with a serious expression, and then walked out of the room with the bag of Ishiwatari Hibika's body. On weekdays, Sake Takashi was cynical in front of everyone, but in front of Kyan Huilengling, his expression was only serious and serious. This city is finally interesting. When she said this, Kyan Huilengling finally couldn't hold back her smile and laughed out loud. She clapped her hands gently, as if she was praising her city. Mom, I have become a chess player, just like you dreamed of. After the smile, Kyan Huilengling's expression suddenly became gloomy. She looked at her reflection in the glass and suddenly shed tears. If one day you look at yourself in the mirror and cry, can you forgive the person who made you change like this? Many things, because of young age, stubbornness, and obstinacy. Even if you know you are wrong, you refuse to apologize, which results in the rift widening and the friendship being completely broken. When people repent, it is too late. Chapter 591. There's always a price. Kyan Huilengling is in trouble. A few days ago, this news was not told to Jialuo by Zinki Zinan on purpose. It was just that at the dinner table, Zinki Zinan would occasionally say some interesting things, including those worth celebrating. The Spark Guild was frustrated, and Kyan Huilengling was in trouble, which was obviously Zinki Zinan's favorite topic. Of course, Jialuo felt that Zinki Zinan was not as disgusted with Kyan Huilengling as she seemed, because if she really hated someone, Zinki Zinan would definitely not mention her again. But Zinki Zinan said that when Kyan Huilengling was in trouble, she seemed very happy. This kind of happiness was obviously just because she was frustrated, but not really, because she encountered a difficult problem. It can even be said that Zinki Zinan would only be happy when Kyan Huilengling encountered small troubles, but if Kyan Huilengling really encountered big troubles, she would probably not be happy. Jialuo didn't know much about the past story between Zinke Zilan and Qian Lengling, but he was sure that the two must have been friends back then, but they had obviously had an inside story to get to where they are now. Perhaps it was for this reason that when the investigation around Ning Zilan made new progress, Zinke Zilan and Jialuo went to the Spark Guild, they did not encounter any trouble. Even Zinke Zilan just told the guard that he was here to see Sake Takashi, and someone came to receive the two of them. The Spark Guild has an independent building, and the exterior of the 30-story building is extremely beautiful. Jialuo and Zinke Zilan followed the receptionist, and occasionally heard her introduce a few words. The president's office was arranged on the top floor. The three of them took the elevator all the way to the 30th floor. The guide took them to Qian Lengling's office, and knocked on the door gently. Then Qian Lengling's voice sounded, and the guide left. Jialuo and Zinke Zilan walked into the office. Qian Lengling, who was processing some documents, raised her head and stretched out her hand to signal them to sit on the sofa. "Wait a moment, I'll finish it right away." Qian Lengling asked Jialuo to wait for a moment, and then she buried her head in the documents in her hands again. The appearance of a 14-year-old girl working seriously was actually a little funny, but at this time, Jialuo could clearly feel the power of Qian Lengling that he could not feel at other times. If Qian Lengling usually looked like a little girl with a bad taste, then now, her every move naturally became calm and full of pressure. Jialuo and Zinke Zilan sat on the sofa. Compared with Zinke Zilan's frown, Jialuo did not seem to be restrained sitting there. Of course, Jialuo might not really be as indifferent as he seemed on the surface, but Jialuo had a feeling that Qian Lengling's behavior might have put pressure on them intentionally or unintentionally. Jialuo gently patted Zinke Zilan's palm. Zinke Zilan turned her head and saw Jialuo's gaze. She instantly thought of something, and she slowly calmed down and restored her indifferent expression. After a while, Qian Lengling seemed to have finished processing the documents in her hand. She put down the pen that had been rustling and stood up from the wide chair. "I'm sorry, I was delayed for a while." Qian Lengling smiled and apologized. This was obviously a kind of etiquette, so Jialuo and the others just dealt with it. "Zinke Zilan, long time no see. I didn't expect to meet you again in this situation." Compared to Qian Lengling's still smiling face, Zinke Zilan's expression seemed a little depressed. This topic was cut off. The two were obviously friends in the past, but they didn't seem to be particularly familiar, or they had completely cut off contact for some reason. But after all, they were acquaintances, so there was no need to worry about what happened next. "Qian Lengling, I want to see Sake Takashi." Jialuo did not let Zinke Zilan ask, but he took the initiative to ask Qian Lengling. Jialuo also considered that Zinke Zilan should not owe Qian Lengling a favor, so it was more appropriate for him to speak. "You want to see Sake Takashi?" Qian Lengling didn't know whether it was real or fake. The expression on her face became a little surprised, and her dark eyes blinked. "Don't pretend. I don't believe you don't know everything. What did Sake Takashi do? Why did I come here?" Faced with Qian Lengling's attitude of asking knowingly, Jialuo was a little angry. He frowned and directly exposed Qian Lengling's thoughts. "You intended to annex the rebel branch led by Jiang Zilan before, and for this purpose you asked Takashi Sake to contact Kikuchi Kengo. We cannot pursue some of the things that happened during that time. However, what kind of deal did Takashi Sake and Agoshi do? Regarding Ning Zilan's affairs, how much of his involvement was involved, and what role did he play? We must know." The Spark Guild is indeed very famous in Binchuan City, but our World Rescue Association, as a new organization that took over Jiang Zilan's reputation, has not yet established itself in the entire Binchuan City with bloodshed and war. Jialuo became more and more angry as he spoke. He looked at Qian Lengling with indifference and directly exposed Qian Lengling's series of plans. On the other hand, Zinke Zilan was really angry at this time. Every time she faced these people who designed various situations and played with people's hearts, she felt extremely disgusted. And when faced with Qian Lengling's pursuit of interests without any bottom line, Zinke Zilan became even angrier. "Qian Lengling, tell me, what is going on with Ning Zilan? Of course, you can be mysterious or hide something like before, but I swear, if you don't tell me today, then one day, I will make you pay for today's bad taste. At this moment, Kyan Huilengling faced Xingzi Qizilan's anger, and she finally felt that something was wrong. Kyan Huilengling obviously didn't know why the matter about Ningxinan would make Xingzi Qizilan so angry, but she didn't think that Xingzi Qizilan's threat was meaningless. In this city, only Kyan Huilengling herself knew what Xingzi Qizilan's words meant as Xingzi Qizen's sister. I'm sorry, my attitude was too much. Now, let's talk openly. In the tense atmosphere, no one expected that Kyan Huilengling, as the president of the Spark Guild, would choose to take a step back in the resentful eyes of Xingzi Qizilan. To be honest, all of Sake Takashi's actions were directed by me. We are not deeply involved in Ningxilan's affairs, and they are not complicated. I know some news, and I can tell you, but you have to do me a favor. By the way, you should all know about the troubles that the Spark Guild has encountered recently. Chapter 592, Fire Without Lights. In the midsummer world, the sun makes everything around it sparkle, and the shadows under the shade of the trees sway in the wind, like a punished person who bows his head and keeps silent. She didn't tell the whole truth. Xingzi Qizilan walked beside Gluo and went downstairs with him. The girl looked at the dazzling sunlight without any expression on her face. Truth or falsehood is no longer so important to us. After all, it's just a deal. Gluo sighed, shook his head silently, and walked towards the door of the Spark Guild. Xingzi Qizilan turned her head to look at the building with a shadow like a mountain, as if she was looking at Kyan Huilengling at the top. Then she turned her head and followed Gluo. As we knew before, the Spark Guild really encountered trouble, and Kyan Huilengling really wanted them to take over this trouble. As a super metropolitan area, Binchuan City has many realm warriors and the auxiliary management of the city. Even in the management of the outer city, the martial artists are more relaxed. In fact, in the eyes of the government, ordinary humans are nothing more than ants. They don't care about the life and death of humans, and they don't even care about managing those garbage like poor people. Since the government is unwilling to take responsibility, then this responsibility naturally falls into the hands of the hunting organization and some gangs. It is for this reason that many people in the outer city are so afraid of gangs, companies, and chaebols. This is not just a matter of whether to offend or not, but it involves livelihood issues. Among these management powers, protection work is also included, and the problem encountered by the Spark Guild is related to this. During the patrol of a certain area in the outer city, there were 3 casualties within a month, and they were all completely missing without even the bodies being found. The management of the Spark Guild once sent people to check, but the result was nothing. It is unrealistic to squat for a long time, but the patrol of ordinary teams is likely to be attacked again. If there is evidence that something unusual has happened, it would be easier to deal with. However, the report from the hunting group is that the team members disappeared completely, as if they were attacked by ghosts. This is creepy, and even whether to send people to patrol the area again has been seriously discussed. Kyan Huilengling's request is also very simple. She wants Gluo and Xingzi Qizilan to find out the truth about the matter in that area. As long as she finds out the problem, Kyan Huilengling swears to tell all the information she knows, and even use the power of the Spark Guild to help the two find out the whole story. Gluo clearly felt from Kyan Huilengling's conversation that she was definitely hiding some facts, but no matter what she was hiding, Gluo and the others had no choice but to accept this task. After all, that was Kyan Huilengling's purpose. For people like Kyan Huilengling, who regard interpersonal relationships as playing chess, they like to choose to solve every problem by moving chess pieces after calculation. Since she wants us to solve this matter, the reason is definitely not that simple. It can even be said that, if we don't solve it, she can't find anyone to solve it for her. In this way, how can she compromise? Walking out of the school gate of the Spark Guild, Gluo's tense expression also relaxed. He stood on the side of the road and explained his behavior to Xingzi Qizilan. The exchange of interests is her need, and it is also something we have to do. Going to this point, maybe it is the best choice. Gluo, I'm sorry for involving you in this kind of thing. There's nothing to be sorry about. It's my responsibility for things related to Ningxinan. GLUO's eyes were firm and resolute. Zingzakizilan looked at GLUO's profile and suddenly lowered her head. At this time, Zingzakizilan suddenly had a feeling that GLUO was really different from anyone else she had met. After so many days of busyness and baptism, facing the huge Changshan group, GLUO's aura became heavier, but this heaviness was not left with any grief, but a strong belief in his determination to face something. Thank you. Zinkizilan couldn't help but smile, and GLUO also laughed. You're welcome. Let's go to the outer city now. Now, isn't it a problem at night? Hearing GLUO's words, Zinkizilan was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect GLUO to go to the crime scene now. There may be a fight at night, so we have to look at the terrain. That's right. Zinkizilan understood what GLUO meant, and had the same idea. The two of them took a specially arranged car, and rushed directly to the outer city of Binshuan City. Don't you tell Zingruo? Maybe you won't come back at night. No, I sent a text message to Jiangzilan, and Zingruo asked her to take care of it. It's okay if I don't go back tonight. GLUO raised his eyebrows proudly, as if to say that he had foresight, and Zinkizilan rolled his eyes, as if to say that he was bragging. Although Crossing Ruo and Zhujiangxia have been playing well together recently, GLUO is still wary of Zhujiangxia, the crazy scientific researcher. On the contrary, Jiangzilan is really a very trustworthy partner. She always likes to act recklessly on weekdays, but when it comes to protecting her companions, she will definitely protect them at all costs. While GLUO and Crossing Qizinyan were chatting, the car soon arrived at the outer city area. After GLUO and Crossing Qizinyan got off the car, their expressions quickly became alert. According to Kai and He Lengling's information, the problem belongs to the T15 area of the outer city area. This area belongs to the earliest industrial area planned when Binshuan City was built. Considering the scale of development, this area is really not short from Binshuan City. But later, with the development, although the area of the outer city area is getting larger and larger, due to the problem of scientific and technological reform, such a huge industrial area is no longer needed, so this T15 industrial area is a distance away from the current Binshuan City. Considering the transportation cost and labor utilization, the factories in this area were eventually moved back to the outer city of Binshuan City and replanned into an industrial area. This old industrial site was completely idle. Someone originally planned to develop this place, but they didn't expect that a wild beast attack would occur here. Because the attack was too fast, Binshuan City was a step late, and all the people who stayed behind died. With so many people dead, this area was judged to be a wild beast threat area, so development was naturally stopped. But it is precisely because of the wild beast threat area that the Spark Guild's hunting group has to pay more attention to this area, which has also caused the current embarrassing situation. Chapter 593, Chasing Darkness. Sir, Miss, I'm really sorry, because the road is closed. I can only take you here. Please forgive me. Well, it's okay. GLUO nodded and got off the car with Zingzakizilan. The driver apologized again and didn't go any further. He just waited here for GLUO and Zingzakizilan to return. The T15 industrial zone itself has been abandoned. There are no people in such places. In addition, many people have died here, and there have been attacks by wild beasts. Ordinary vehicles are prohibited from passing. GLUO and Zingzakizilan left the checkpoint and walked straight towards the T15 industrial zone without stopping. But as they approached, GLUO suddenly found that as an abandoned area, the T15 industrial zone was not as dilapidated as he had imagined. Even the large-scale industrial buildings standing in the distance looked particularly burly. From a distance, there was no human habitation here. The only few living creatures were wild dogs. They barked a few times when GLUO and his partner approached them, but in the face of their disregard, the wild dogs ran away in disgrace, looking quite capable. After walking through the area where the wild dogs had stayed before, GLUO and his partner looked around to see if there were any unusual traces, but apart from the emptiness and dust, there was nothing new to discover. It can be seen that this place should have had a good development in the past, and even the relocation of industry did not affect its future. The attack by the wild beast was the real reason why it became what it is now. It was unknown how long it had been since the attack, but at least GLUO could not see any blood or bones, but many of the shorter houses had collapsed. This kind of collapse was not the kind of collapse caused by old age, but the kind of shattering that was like an eggshell smashed by a hammer and could not withstand the blow. Along the way, GLUO and the others finally found the traces of the beast-tide attack. The road had been trampled into a devastated place, and everything that collapsed along the road seemed like a scar in this huge industrial zone. At this moment, GLUO and Zingzakizanan couldn't help but take a breath at the same time. They didn't see the scene at that time, but the traces trampled by the beasts were 20 to 30 meters wide, and everything along the way was as shabby as a locust. It is conceivable how terrible the beasts were at that time. GLUO even felt that, even if he faced this beast-tide now, he couldn't stop it at all. Let's look forward. Zingzakizanan looked around carefully, but didn't seem to find anything abnormal, so she suggested to continue forward. Well, the abnormal place should not be here. GLUO threw down the broken soil in his hand, looked around again, and then got up and continued forward with Zingzakizanan. Of course, they couldn't have come here to commemorate the victims. According to Kyan Hilengling's statement, the location where the hunting team responsible for patrolling here disappeared was uncertain, but at least there was no problem with the entrance, so the two didn't pay much attention to the entrance, but in order not to miss any abnormalities, they also searched here. As they walked inside, there were more houses. GLUO felt that there should be restaurants or supermarkets on both sides of the road, but from the outside, it was empty. Even if there were some things, they might have been taken away by homeless people or scavengers. There was nothing useful to see. The two walked forward, and the more they walked in, the more depressed they felt. It was still broad daylight, but GLUO felt an inexplicable chill. This place won't be haunted. GLUO smiled and joked, but he didn't expect that Zinkizanan's originally calm expression suddenly froze, and she jumped to GLUO's side reflexively. No. Is there really a ghost? Zinkizanan seemed a little nervous at this time. She had always been proud of herself, but she actually looked a little pitiful. Of course, anyone can think of it. When the wild beasts attacked, thousands of people died here. Their bodies were even eaten by the wild beasts and could not be found. In addition, this place was abandoned, and there might be many people buried on the spot. It is absolutely not surprising that there are vengeful spirits here. Haha, I'm kidding. How could there be ghosts? GLUO was also a little worried at this time, and couldn't help laughing dryly twice, but at this time, suddenly there was a crow's cry from a little further away from them. The two were scared and turned around, and the crow had already flown away. Ha. Zinkizanan breathed a sigh of relief after discovering that the crow had flown away. At this time, she suddenly found that she was holding GLUO's arm and hurriedly let go. Sorry. I'm sorry. It's okay. I shouldn't joke. GLUO also felt a little embarrassed and could only end the topic quickly. Zinkizanan also felt that her behavior just now was really a bit embarrassing. She could only shift her gaze to other places, but just when her eyes passed by a certain place, the girl's expression suddenly froze. GLUO. What's wrong? GLUO looked at Zinkizanyan's expression and knew that there must be something wrong. At this time, Zinkizanyan had already run forward, and GLUO followed closely. The two quickly rushed to the place where the crow had just flown away. Zinkizanyan jumped onto the fallen electric pole and climbed up the roof of the small building along the electric pole. GLUO followed behind her and reached the roof a little slower. When the two walked to the place where the crow had just flown away, they found that the roof of the small building had been completely pierced, and looking down from the hole in the roof, there was an obvious dent on the ground. This is. GLUO didn't frown. The two jumped off the roof decisively and began to carefully check the ground. As they expected, the traces on the ground were obviously not left by the wild beast. It can be vaguely seen that this was left by a human falling from the roof. It directly pierced through the roof and the floor of the second floor and fell straight to the ground. And this kind of falling force, let alone ordinary people, even a realm warrior would probably find it difficult to resist. GLUO checked the marks on the ground and felt that the world was really crazy. It can be seen that the person who fell did not die after falling. He probably wanted to escape, but then something caught up with him. The two fought in the room, and everything around was destroyed. But what was even more strange was that there were only traces of fighting, and there were no corpses or bloodstains. The so-called pit formed by the person falling was certainly not the human figure in the funny cartoon. Judging from the marks on the ground, it did not look like a bird. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 594 Growth. One thing can prove that the size of humans is completely incomparable to that of wild beasts. When humans fall from a high altitude, they will definitely land on their backs and buttocks. This is determined by the structure of the human body, and it can naturally be judged. The traces on the ground are very obvious traces of human backs being smashed. The square pit is sunken downwards, and the cracks spread and crack around. In this small supermarket, the scattered shelves are already covered with dust. The traces of fierce fighting seem to tear apart everything in the room. The steel shelves have been twisted and deformed, and some even look like they have been crushed by a forklift. Zinky Zilan took a look at the miserable situation in the room, and then returned to the depression, where the person fell again, reaching down with his palm to estimate the depth of the person's fall. The floor of the room is made of cement and tiles. It is impossible for a human body to leave such marks. The reason is also very simple. Even if a pure iron statue fell from the roof, it would not be possible to smash to such a depth. If it was really a human, and its body had such excessive kinetic energy, the moment it hit the concrete floor, it would be like a glass full of water falling to the ground, instantly shattering into a meat paste all over the floor. But if you say that a human being has not died after falling, and has such an effect, and can still jump around, and continue to fight, such a human being is simply a monster. Zingzaki Zilan, do you have any useful information? After carefully checking the surrounding situation, GLUO walked back to Zingzaki Zilan and squatted down. What about you? Zingzaki Zilan frowned, looking a little unsure of something. Pure iron of this thickness of the shelf can be smashed into this effect. GLUO compared the thickness of the iron shelf's bracket, which was nearly 1 centimeter, with his fingers, and felt that this world was really a bit crazy. The small supermarket may have sold some heavy motor parts, and the shelves were obviously all specially made. GLUO had observed that a normal 3 blue steel rank warrior, even if he used his source power, could only create some curved arcs at most, but the fighters had beaten their axe here into a knot, so one could imagine the strength between them. Hearing GLUO's sigh, Zinky Zilan certainly understood what GLUO meant to express. She pressed her fingers on the cracked depression, and her expression looked more serious. From the rim of the depression created by this pit, the person who fell must not be wearing any armor, and even this body shape is very similar to that of a woman, and a young woman. But if the person who fell was not wearing armor, then she could have created this depth. Zinky Zilan held her palm upright and stretched it into the depression, and her entire palm had sunk into it. Seriously speaking, if the tiles were smashed first, and then the concrete floor, and it was a human female without any additional protection, then she would have to fall from at least 500 meters to achieve this effect. But it is not ruled out that she did not simply fall, but someone was also in the air, rushing down from top to bottom, and carrying her to the ground. But if she is not dead in this way, Zinky Zilan pursed her lips. Her expression looked very solemn. As far as I know, humans below the 6th gold rank cannot have this kind of physical strength, and even people at the 6th gold rank, not everyone has this level of physical strength. After listening to Zinky Zilan's words, GLUO turned his head to look at a big hole in the wall that was kicked open by a foot. The exposed steel bars and concrete showed the kind of terrible impact that could not be resisted. In other words, the one who fell was a 6th gold rank realm warrior. No, it shouldn't be. Why? GLUO was also confused by Zinky Zilan's speculation. Why was the conclusion just reached denied again? If it was a 6th golden rank warrior, he couldn't have fallen so badly. A 6th golden rank warrior's strength has surpassed ordinary people's imagination and can fly. Zingzaki Zilan took her hand out of the pit and slowly stood up. compared to believing that the person who fell was a 6th golden rank warrior. I believe it was a powerful humanoid wild beast. Zingzaki Shinan was halfway through her words, as if she thought of something. She slowly clenched her hands, and the emotion on her face was an uncontrollable killing intent. What's wrong? Jialuo raised his eyebrows, a little confused about Zingzaki Shinan's expression at this time. Or, the person who fell is probably not a human, or not a simple human. Jialuo listened to Zingzaki Shinan's gritting teeth, and looked at her angry expression, and reacted instantly. Before, the incident in which Changqiu and Qianli injected Kuang Xinsu with the god's blood, and caused Kuang Xinsu's death had become Zingzaki Shinan's nightmare and hatred. The research on the blood of God has never been abandoned by the great god. Their unscrupulous transformation of humans may indeed create such a monster. In the current situation, if all these doubts are combined, then the possibility of what Zingzaki Zilan guessed is even greater. After all, it is really unbelievable to say that this kind of depression was caused by a human falling down. Gat. Just as Jialuo and Zingzaki Zilan digested this shocking news, a crow's cry suddenly sounded above their heads. Jialuo and the two looked at each other and saw doubts in each other's eyes. The two did not think much just now, but at this time, some questions also appeared in their minds. Why is this place so desolate, and it can even be said that there are not many creatures? How can there be a crow here? And the location of this crow just now happened to be above the roof of this small supermarket, which left no room for others to doubt. If it weren't for this crow, Jialuo and the others would probably not notice the abnormality here at all. The crow's cry seemed like a call. Soon, the dark bird landed on the big hole just above the roof. It stood on the edge, tilted its head, looked at Jialuo and Crossing Qi Xinyan who were looking up at it, and made two harsh cries. This doesn't look like a wild crow. Wild birds don't dare to get so close to humans. Its cry is definitely conveying some information. Jialuo discovered the weirdness at the first time. He thought of reading some knowledge in the book and instantly concluded that this crow was raised by humans. Its owner must be coming. Crossing Qi Xinyan looked at the crow that was also staring at the two of them with its neck tilted. He was sure that its owner was coming, otherwise, this crow couldn't be so brave. Chapter 595 Let Go. Trample, tramp, tramp. As expected, Jialuo and Crossing Qi Xinyan did not wait too long. The sound of light footsteps soon came from a distance. The pace was not fast, and they did not hide their arrival. It seemed that they did not have hostility. Jialuo and Crossing Qi Xinyan looked at each other, but did not show hostility immediately. After all, they did not know who the newcomer was, so it was not easy to have a conflict. Outside the door, the footsteps quickly came closer. The small supermarket seemed to have moved before. All the goods had been moved away, leaving only the shelves. The door was also covered by a thick rolling shutter. The footsteps walked to the door, paused for a moment, and then a tooth-grinding pulling sound rang out. It was as if there was a car with 4 steel cables connecting the 4 corners of the rolling shutter, and then the car moved forward, and the steel cables were dragged backwards under the force of the pull. At that moment, the steel rolling shutter was like a piece of paper with 4 corners lifted up. The creaking sound kept ringing, and the metal iron plate slowly deformed, and finally it was pulled out with a bang. Behind the rolling door was a floor-to-ceiling glass door. Through the glass door, Jialuo and the other person who were still in the room also saw the person outside. It was a girl who looked about 20 years old. Her black hair was cut to the shoulder position. Her skin looked a little pale. Her quiet face had a delicate beauty that made people feel distressed. At this time, the girl stood a little away from the rolling door. She spread her right hand in front of her. There were several plant seeds in the center of her palm. At this time, these plant seeds actually stretched out thick vines without any soil, relying only on her source power supply. 4 vines pulled the rolling door from the 4 corners and pulled it down abruptly. Seeing Jialuo and Zingzaki Zilan in the room, the girl was also stunned for a moment. She nodded gently and greeted Jialuo and the other person in a friendly manner. At this time, the glass door was still locked with a U-shaped lock. The girl's body did not move. Pure green source power flowed from her palm to the seeds. The 4 thick vines shrank back and dropped the rolling door that they had previously grabbed. Then, it once again wrapped around the huge lock. With a slight struggle, the lock made of a thick iron pillar was torn apart by the vines. Then the vines pulled the glass door open again, as if 2 security guards were standing at the door. After the door opened, the 4 thick vines began to shrink and dry up rapidly, as if they had suddenly lost their nutrition. The girl stood there, watching the vines lose their vitality, then bent down and placed the completely dead seeds in her hand on the ground, as if releasing them to return to the earth. Or burying them here. Hello. I'm a warrior from the hunting guild. My name is Koaharaoi. The quiet girl walked into the door and greeted GLUO and the others respectfully. GLUO. My name is Zingzakizilan. We don't belong to any organization. GLUO and the others also reported their names, but did not reveal their organization. Zingzakizilan even said it specifically, to prevent Koaharaoi from misunderstanding the purpose of their coming here. Gal. At this time, the crow that had been standing at the hole in the roof also flew over. It circled and landed on Koaharaoi's shoulder, looking like a falcon standing on a hunter's arm. GLUO looked at the crow that had been staring at him and found that this bird, which symbolized bad luck, was unexpectedly majestic. It tilted its head and swept its eyes over GLUO and Zingzakizilan, looking as if it was on guard against their sudden attack. It was such a blackbird that reminded people of death and bad luck. It stood on the shoulder of a quiet and beautiful girl. It was a scene that should have given people a conflicting feeling, but it was inexplicably harmonious. It was also this harmony that made Zingzakizilan frown. She and GLUO stood in front of Koaharaoi without even saying a word, but they inexplicably relaxed their vigilance. The previous vigilance and fighting spirit all disappeared unconsciously. This feeling that the other party was trustworthy, even though there was no communication yet, made Zingzakizilan feel alert. Mr. GLUO, Mr. Shizuki, don't misunderstand me. I have no ill intentions. Koaharaoi looked at Shizuki's alert expression, smiled and shook her head, expressing her honesty. Why are you here? Shizuki's expression was serious at this time. She seemed to be fighting against the relaxed feeling in her heart, full of tension. You, don't be nervous. Koaharaoi looked at the abnormality of Shizuki and hurriedly stepped back a few steps. As the distance between them widened, Shizuki gradually relaxed. My original talent is somewhat special in terms of affinity. For people who are very vigilant, it may cause discomfort. Koaharaoi's clear eyes met with GLUO, who was looking over, gentle and calm. Affinity. GLUO looked at the girl in front of him, who looked soft and even a little weak, and he was a little afraid of her in his heart. Although the girl named Koaharaoi in front of him seemed to have no fighting ability, I'm afraid that, if she really started to fight, the success rate of sneak attack would be very high. Don't get me wrong, I just became a martial artist not long ago, and my fighting power is very weak. Koaharaoi smiled a little embarrassedly, but at this time GLUO obviously didn't dare to underestimate her. You haven't told me yet, why are you here? Compared to GLUO's calmness, Zingzakizilan seemed a little irritated. She always cared about why Koaharaoi appeared here, so she asked again. I was summoned. At this time, when talking about why she came here, Koaharaoi's expression became serious, as if she could not compromise on this matter. Summon? GLUO didn't expect this girl to give him this answer, and his expression was a little dazed. Well, last night, I heard crying, and the person who wanted me to save her was here calling me here. Koaharaoi pointed to the ground, and her expression on her face was particularly serious. Last night, where were you? Compared to GLUO's doubts about the other party's motives, Zingzakizilan paid attention to the location she expressed. In the dormitory. Koaharaoi stared with her dark eyes, not avoiding the questioning looks of GLUO and Shizuki. The dormitory of the hunting guild? You were in Hamakoa City at that time, which is at least 20 to 30 kilometers away from here. What could you hear? Of course. I did hear crying. Koaharaoi responded to Shizuki's question solemnly and nodded affirmatively. If I hadn't heard crying, I wouldn't have come here. Chapter 596 Frankness. I don't know why this summoning can travel so far, but since I heard it, I need to find out the truth of the matter. Although Koaharaoi looks weak, she seems to be unyielding at this moment. It's as if as long as she upholds justice, she will never give in. So the next moment, Koahara Reoi and Hashizuki Erita looked at each other, and it seemed that they were not willing to give in to each other. Gialuo looked at the state of the two women, and felt a headache at the time. Although Koahara Reoi's enemies and friends were unknown, she didn't look like a bad person from her appearance and the feeling she gave. After all, she was a realm warrior of the hunting guild. Since she revealed her identity, she probably didn't mean to make trouble. On the contrary, Hashizuki Erita seemed to be a little too much at this time. Erita. Gialuo turned his head and called Hashizuki Erita's name. The girl with purple eyes suddenly realized her loss of composure at this time. She slowly put down her clenched fist and took a step back. Koahara Reoi, since you were summoned, then you should take a look at what message the person who summoned you left for you. After being reminded by Gialuo, Hashizuki Erita didn't seem to want to ask Koahara Reoi any more questions. She stepped back and made way for the closest position, obviously letting Koahara Reoi check the dent on the ground made by the human. Miss Koahara Reoi, Hashizuki Erita and I have been asked to investigate the missing members of the Spark Guild's hunting group. I hope you can tell us what you have found. Gialuo also took a step back. At this time, Hashizuki Erita was in a state of being upset, so he was about to ask. Spark Guild? Okay. Koahara Reoi looked at Gialuo and Hashizuki Erita with some surprise, obviously wondering why the two were asked by the Spark Guild. But at this time, she didn't intend to ask anything, but walked directly to the dent on the ground and began to check the state of the ground. Koahara Reoi checked very carefully and seemed much more professional than Gialuo and Hashizuki Erita. She reached her palm into the ground and pressed the broken pieces with her hands, then raised her head and looked at the hole in the second floor and the roof with the same hole. There must be more than one person falling down. Koahara Reoi looked for a long time and suddenly spoke out her judgment. It should be two creatures falling from the sky one after the other. The one behind should be chasing the figure in front. The two creatures are of the same species, and they should not be riding wild beasts. The biggest possibility is, they can fly. Can fly? Gialuo looked at Koahara Reoi who was looking around, and even wondered if she was joking. Look carefully at the shape of the depression on the ground. The person who fell should have resisted the pursuer's attack head-on, and then the impact of the attack made it impossible for him to change direction, and could only fall down. When he fell, the person who hit the ground was obviously on his back, but there were two pits on the ground that were more seriously sunken than the rest. This couldn't be a mark caused by armor. Instead, it seemed that the wings were stretched out and suffered a lot of impact just before falling to the ground. Koahara Reoi didn't mean to joke. She pointed to a place on the ground that was slightly deeper than other places and expressed her unfounded guess. If it really can fly, human strongmen can do it, but if it reaches this level of flying, it is not something that ordinary warriors can do. Normal people fall down, and their buttocks will land first, but look at this hole. The first place to land is the shoulders, and if it is a normal shoulder, it is impossible to smash such a mark. There are many ways for humans to fly, but if I only look at the current situation, I can't imagine how this human has broken through his own behavioral habits. I boldly judge that he must have wings on his back, otherwise, a normal person falling from the roof, his bones have been completely shattered into a ball, and it is impossible for him to support himself and smash the second floor into pieces and fall to the ground again. Only this humanoid creature has wings, and this pair of wings is tougher than the body, so it can survive safely in this situation, where it cannot control its own fall. After it fell to the ground, it may not even have time to react, and the pursuer behind it appeared, and the pursuer hit it again by some method. The fallen creature that was attacked did not even have time to react, and could only resist again. The force generated for the second time caused the ground to sink again, but this time the traces left by the smash would be very different. Koahara Reoi did not have the kind of speculation and verification that a normal person would have. She seemed to be sure that what she thought of was the truth of the matter, and her tone of voice was decisive. Gialuo couldn't accept that the human being Koahara Reoi mentioned had wings, but he still looked at the traces on the ground under Koahara Reoi's instructions. Sure enough, although there was a depression in the shape of a human on the ground, this depression seemed to be divided into 2 layers, and the circle of the first layer was much larger. The second layer was the deepest part, and it didn't look like it was caused by a fall. Instead, it looked like a hammer smashed a stone into the ground, and then picked up the stone, and the ground was flat. According to what you said, that is, 2 human-shaped wild beasts fell here. Compared to GLUO's listening to the heavenly book, Zinki Zilan actually believed Koraharareoi's words. She bent down to check the ground, and asked Koraharareoi very seriously. As far as I know, there are indeed many wild beasts in the shape of humans with wings, but the one who summoned me here last night and called me to save her is definitely a human. Koraharareoi was obviously sure of her previous guess, but at this time, she actually pieced together 2 completely impossible answers. Humans with wings. You mean 2 humans with wings are fighting? Then the defeated one is running away and finally falls down. And then the winner does not give up the pursuit, and after knocking him down from the sky, he also chases him down, and then the 2 fight again, and finally fly away. GLUO turned his head to look at the mess of weapons, and suddenly understood why the door was not opened. If both creatures have wings, then they flew away in the end, which can explain everything. But, how can humans have wings? GLUO felt a little puzzled. Why did the matter become analyzed like this? It was all the same as in a novel. Who said that humans can't have wings? I've seen it with my own eyes. Chapter 597 Understand. When I was little, I was saved by a human with wings. She was like an angel, but her wings were black. At this time, Koraharareoi stood up from the ground, with an indescribable seriousness in her expression. An angel with black wings? Shizuki Erita listened to Koraharareoi's answer, which was like a child's fantasy, but she did not sneer at it. She lowered her head and looked at the marks on the ground, frowning thoughtfully. A few years ago. A few years ago. About 8 years ago. Koraharareoi did not expect Shizuki Erita to really pay attention to this question. She thought about it and was not sure about the answer, but it should be quite famous. About 8 years ago, there was a fire in the old gymnasium in Hamakura City. Not the current gymnasium, but the older one, which was reduced to ruins in the earthquake. I remember it seemed to be a competition between organizations. Anyway, the game was not over yet, and the fire broke out inexplicably. However, it was not on the other side of the stands, but in the building. I was still young at the time and I ran away. The staff took me to a specially arranged place to wait for my parents, but suddenly, the flames poured into the entire floor like a river. As if recalling the situation at that time, Koraharareoi pursed her lips with a serious expression. It was obviously not just arson, or a fire somewhere, spreading everywhere. That state was like a wild beast attack. The flames flowed everywhere, and everything began to burn rapidly in the blink of an eye. I was very scared at the time, and I didn't dare to run around during the evacuation, so I just hid. As a result, the fire got bigger and bigger, and I even thought I would die. But, just when I was confused, someone picked me up, and vaguely, I saw her elder with a pair of black wings. Later, she rushed out of the building with me, and put me in the garden, and then, she left. Is it possible that you had hallucinations when you were smoked? GLUO thought about the situation described by Koraharareoi at the time, wondering if it was possible that Koraharareoi 8 years ago had seen it wrong. After all, she was probably only 11 or 12 years old at that time, and her imagination was rich. Would she make up the whole story in her mind while confused? No. Facing GLUO's other possibility, Koraharareoi shook her head heavily. Obviously, many people had asked her this before, so the girl was more certain. Absolutely impossible, because there were many people watching the game that day, and many children were lost. In order to prevent the lost children from being taken away by bad people due to poor care, the place to find the children was on the 10th floor of the building. The entire 10th floor was full of lost children except for the staff. The flames came very suddenly. At a certain moment, it seemed to burst and flow everywhere. The whole floor was a sea of fire. Everyone was evacuating at that time. I was hiding. If it weren't for that person, I would definitely die. At that time, she took me directly out of the window, to leave the 10th floor, and she kept flying to take me to hide in the garden. If she couldn't fly, how could she cross the distance of 400 or 500 meters? Koahara spoke very rationally, and even brought some of her own analysis after the incident. Zingzaki beside GLUO thought about it at this time and nodded. GLUO, I know that distance. It is indeed impossible to get there casually from the 10th floor. Zingzaki purple eyes stared at Koahara affirmative expression, and finally closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. Theoretically, only 6th level gold level warriors have the ability to fly, but you are talking about black wings, and in human form, so there is obviously a deeper hidden story. What GLUO did not expect was that Zingzaki was so hostile to Koahara, but at this time, she actually chose to believe her words. Right. I said, no one believes what I say, even the police don't believe me. Too much, I never lie. Koahara has obviously always been a little resentful. No one believes the facts she said, and at this time, Zingzaki actually believes her words, which obviously makes her very happy. Is there any other information? Zingzaki attitude towards Koahara has also improved a little at this time. Although there is still a sense of vigilance in her expression, she is no longer hostile. Everything can only be guessed. There is no way to be sure. Talking about the current situation, Koahara expression has also become solemn. As a warrior of the hunting guild, she has of course heard about the problems in this area, so she also wants to solve the doubts. Then let's make this the main location, and let's go to other places to have a look. Shizuki was very decisive. Since she was sure that there was no other information here, she would not stay here any longer, and suggested to continue to check nearby. Well, take advantage of the day to take a look around. If this kind of battle only happens once, it will be here. If it happens many times, there must be problems in other places. Since GLUO and Shizuki had determined the plan, they did not stay and started to walk towards the door. Unexpectedly, Koahara also followed the two. GLUO actually planned to take this girl with him. After all, her analysis seemed to be more thorough than the two. However, because it was the first time they met, and Koahara and Shizuki were hostile, GLUO did not bring it up, but unexpectedly, this girl actually took the initiative to follow. Shizuki did not say anything about Koahara following, which was also considered as tacit consent. The three of them continued forward along the street, with Koahara on the left and Shizuki on the right. The three of them walked forward side by side, checking for other problems on the left and right. To be honest, GLUO felt that this was quite awkward, but if Shizuki and Koahara stood together, they would probably fight. Black Crow, check around and see if you can find similar traces of battle as just now. After the three of them almost walked out of the range just now, Koahara whispered to the crow on her shoulder, and the crow called out very humanely, and then flew over the buildings. Black Crow, check above the buildings. Let's take a look on the street. If there is nothing unusual, we will move to the roof. After Koahara let the crow go, she repeated her plan to GLUO and Shizuki. Of course, the two agreed with her idea, and then the three of them began to patrol forward on the long street. Unexpectedly, GLUO originally thought that such traces of battle would be rare, but not long after, as the three of them went deeper, they actually saw similar traces of battle again. Chapter 598 Chase. Moreover, the traces of battle this time were more serious than the last time. It was a 3-story building, and the traces of battle were all over the building, even turning the walls into a hornet's nest. GLUO and the other two carefully patrolled the house, and found that the ceiling of the floor was penetrated by the fall again, and the broken door was covered with dust, and there was no sign of being pushed open. Could it be that there really are winged humans? But why are there traces of battle? GLUO stood on the roof, looking at the ruins of the T-15 area from afar, and his heart slowly sank. The ruins of hundreds of kilometers, the smell of brokenness and decay spread here, and there was always an inexplicable cold breath in the uninhabited area. GLUO, Zingzaki and a girl named Koahara walked among the ruins. They were looking for traces of battle, and finally everything they found was shocking. Too much. Really too much. The traces of the battle were obviously not from a long time ago. They could not see much at a close distance, but as they continued to move forward and got further and further away from the direction of Hamakura City, everything could only be described as devastated. What kind of power is this? Who is it? Zingzakizilan picked up the soil and rocks on the ground, and her palm gently squeezed them. The originally solid concrete blocks turned into slag like tofu dregs. Of course, it was not, because Zingzakizilan used much strength. The girl actually just touched it lightly. The reason why the soil and rocks became like this was obviously caused by a battle. A circle of flames with a diameter of at least 20 meters unfolded here. The surrounding soil and rocks seemed to be burned by high temperature and broke at the touch. The temperature was unknown. There was not even ashes on the grass and trees, just some black dust. I'm more curious why no one has discovered it. Gialuo looked at the building that was cut into two by a blow not far away, and his expression became serious. Patrol range. Koahara Reoi stretched out her hand and asked the crow on her shoulder to continue searching. There was already some answer in her expression. The T-15 area is under the charge of the Spark Guild's patrol team. Other organizations will not interfere here, and the patrol team's main task is to confirm the existence of wild beasts. These are just ruins. As long as they ensure that there are no wild beasts hiding here, and then attack the outer city area of Binshuan City, they will not care what happens in these ruins. But this is too many. From the looks of it, at least we have confirmed that there are at least 40 battlefields along the way. Gialuo frowned, obviously angry that these battlefields had not been discovered. He was still worried about the losses of the Spark Guild's patrol team before, but now it seems that he really thinks these trash deserve to die. Gialuo, the patrol team's mission is just to check for wild beasts. As for what happens here, they don't care. After all, their mission is just that. As long as there are no wild beasts attacking Hamakura City, it doesn't matter what this ruin becomes. Koahara Reoi seemed to understand the patrol team's thoughts very well. She picked up the burn marks on the ground with her fingers, and there was no anger in her expression. So, the patrol team won't go so deep. They will only patrol within a certain range of the entrance and leave directly after the end. There are very few traces of fighting in the first half, and it is obvious that they deliberately avoided that place. Most of the battles took place in places where these patrol teams don't patrol. How is this how they protect the city? Gialuo listened to the information that Koahara Reoi said, sighed, and decided not to pursue anything, but he also thought of the common point of these battles, that is to say, this kind of battle is avoiding the discovery of the patrol team, but a battle of this level must make a lot of noise. Hashizaki Arakawa took a deep breath, his purple eyes looking into the distance, and his tongue licked his lips. If the patrol team heard the sound of fighting, it is impossible for them not to come and check. With so many battlefields, there must be a lot of fighting at this time. According to the regulations, the patrol teams of each organization are prohibited from having fixed patrol times. There are more than a dozen patrol routes that are different every day. Since the patrol time here is not fixed, why didn't any of the many battles alarm the patrol team? The battlefield just now directly destroyed half of an entire building. I estimate that the sound made at that time, not to mention the entrance, even the patrol team within a few kilometers near the T-15 area could hear it. Thinking back carefully, in the first half of the area, not only were there very few battlefields for fighting, but there was no special force in each battlefield. It was completely a physical collision. However, when it came to the routes that the patrol teams would not patrol, there were traces of burning flames everywhere, and this kind of flame was not a normal flame. The circle of the eruption of the blazing power was estimated to be so high that the high temperature at that time could melt steel. That is to say, Gialuo certainly understood what Zingzakizilan wanted to express, or he guessed something. The two sides of the battle not only mastered the patrol tracks of the patrol teams, but also the patrol times. Gialuo was also shocked by his answer. You know, this answer is not ordinary. It means that both sides of these battles are very familiar with some parts of the Spark Guild, and they may even be insiders. If this assumption is true, these battles occurred at a time when they could avoid the patrol team, and therefore the entire front half of the T-15 area was deliberately left aside, and the unattended back half became the main battlefield. Now that I think about it, the battlefield we first saw was a chase. That is, someone escaped there, and the people chasing behind had to fight there. Think about it again. Every place is a frontal battle, and both sides of the battle use some kind of ability to control fire. GLUO recalled the battlefields he saw along the way, and slowly determined his answer. As he moved away from the initial entrance, this uninhabited area was full of obvious battlefields. Although he didn't know what the two sides looked like when they fought, from the ruins, it was definitely a hysterical battle. There are only battle ruins, but no corpses can be seen. Koahara nodded to GLUO's words, obviously agreeing with him, but at the same time she also raised a strange point. From the situation on these battlefields, it seems that no one has held back in any battle, but the weird thing is that there is no corpse. Even if they were carried away, there must be bloodstains left behind. The three of them kept moving forward along the way, seeing more and more battlefields. They checked each one and occasionally saw pieces of clothing, but no corpses. And these clothes were all armed uniforms that only realm warriors would wear. Chapter 599 Disdain. Armed suits are specially designed for the convenience of fighting for the realm warriors, and their price is definitely not affordable for ordinary people. These armed suits are completely black in color, without any patterns or decorations at all, and there is no way to check them. There are many battlefields with fragments of clothes, but there are no corpses. Is it possible that the two people have been practicing against each other, and although they fight fiercely, they are not fatal, so they stop at the right time? GLUO couldn't think of the answer, so he gave a simple guess. Impossible. These traces of fighting are obviously all done with all their strength, and they are all traces of desperate efforts. Think about the battlefield. How could it be a simple fight? Koahara denied GLUO's guess without hesitation. She has a strong observation ability. The traces of fighting left behind don't make her feel like playing at all. Now it seems the biggest possibility is that these people who fought and killed took the corpses back. Zingzakizanan listened to the communication between GLUO and Koahara, thinking without saying a word. After a moment, she took a deep breath and cast her eyes forward. Let's keep going forward. We have been walking for 2 or 3 hours. Before it gets dark, we will not stop and keep going forward to see if we can find the edge of the battlefield. After so many traces of the battlefield, the three people had more and more doubts in their hearts, but the information they got could not explain it all. Even with the continuous analysis, the problems represented by these doubts made people feel cold. Since arriving at the T15 area in the morning, GLUO and Zingzakizanan began to search along the road. Soon after, Koahara joined them, and the three began to explore forward. For a whole day, the three did not stop except for a short break at noon. But because they often stayed in various battlefields to check the situation, they did not pass through the T15 area until the evening. But, the three of them had already checked more than 100 battlefields. Similarly, there was no corpse in these more than 100 battlefields. After searching for nearly a whole day, the three people and a crow searched together in this wasteland, but apart from the broken battlefields, they did not find anything useful. As the night fell, the bonfire burned in the house with broken windows. GLUO and the other two sat on the ground, leaning against the wall. To sum up, the most fortunate thing about all the things that happened today is that we still have food. GLUO chewed the beef jerky and toasted buns in his hand, and his mood was surprisingly good. The buns toasted by the bonfire tasted really good, but the beef jerky was really hard to death. That's right, thank you Miss Zingzakizanan for your wise preparation. Koahara sat on GLUO's left hand side, biting the beef jerky hard, with a very happy smile on her face. After a day of contact, the three people had a lot of understanding. Koahara and Zingzakizanan, who were particularly hostile before, had also gotten better at this time. However, Hashizaki Shinageo still maintained an indifferent attitude towards most people, while Koahara was more gentle. She did not care about Hashizaki Shinageo's not so good attitude, but chatted with GLUO very happily. Hashizaki Shinageo sat on GLUO's right hand side, looking at the burning bonfire and said nothing, but she did not eat beef jerky, but gnawed an apple instead. Beef jerky is a regular outdoor food. It is easy to preserve after air drying, has high calories, can replenish consumption, and tastes good. However, Shizuki Shinageo clearly prepared beef jerky and steamed buns for GLUO, but brought fruit herself. It was really strange. I'll go outside and take a look. Shizuki Shinageo quickly finished the apple in her hand, then threw the apple core into the bonfire, got up and walked outside. What's wrong with her? Watching Shizuki Shinageo leave, Kawahara Rayoi quietly approached GLUO and asked in a low voice. She has this personality. Although she looks a little indifferent, she is a very good person. GLUO watched Shizuki Shinageo walk out of the door, sighed, and gave Kawahara Rayoi an answer that was not really an answer. If someone else had experienced everything, Shizuki Erita would have gone crazy, but she still maintained her pure soul, although she seemed to hate the world. But in fact, she was a very gentle child in her heart. After all, she was born as a young lady, and the environment she had lived in was too warm. Now that she realized the darkness of the world, it was even more difficult for her to accept it. She must have experienced something very sad. Kawahara Rayoi propped up her chin and ate the steamed bun in her hand, leaving only the beef jerky to tear bit by bit, with a look of pity on her face. In fact, Shizuki Erita's appearance is outstanding, and that mature temperament makes people want to contact her. Kawahara Rayoi may also want to be friends with Shizuki Erita, but unfortunately, Shizuki Erita now doesn't seem to want to contact more people except GLUO. GLUO sighed deeply. Without saying much, he got up from the ground and walked towards Shizuki Erita outside. Zilan, you guys go to sleep tonight. I'll keep watch. No, I'll do it. If you have something to fight, I'll do it. Zinky Zilan looked at the boundless night sky without turning her head and knew GLUO's existence accurately. Zilan, your perception is not as good as mine. When I need you to keep watch, I will definitely wake you up. Don't worry, I'm not just a bronze rank realm warrior. Zujdangsha gave me a lot of equipment. I can guarantee safety. Zinky Zilan turned her head to look at GLUO, shook her head gently, and rejected GLUO's idea of keeping watch. Okay. Since Zinky Zilan had made arrangements, GLUO didn't say much. For a realm warrior, not sleeping for a day is not a big deal, and there is no need to argue about anything. GLUO, that girl, she is very powerful. Kawahara Rayoi, very powerful? Hearing what Zinky Zilan said, GLUO frowned, wondering if there was something wrong with her. It's not that she's good at fighting, but she's very brave when interacting with people. Yeah, this kind of person is simply the enemy of our social phobia. GLUO naturally understood what Zinky Zilan meant. He nodded gently, completely unifying the two of them. GLUO, go to bed early, don't sleep too deeply tonight. I have a feeling that something will happen. Zinky Zilan's purple eyes turned to look into the distance and slowly took a deep breath. Okay. GLUO knew that he couldn't persuade Zinky Zilan, so he didn't waste any more time. He reminded Zinky Zilan to be careful, then turned around and walked back to the campfire, sat back to his previous position, and slowly closed his eyes. Chapter 600 Conjecture. GLUO, you're going to bed so early? Kawahara Rayoi looked at Shizuki Erita outside. An expression of interest appeared on her face, and then she moved closer to GLUO. By the way, what's your relationship? I always feel that Shizuki Erita's attitude towards you is very different from her attitude towards me. Are you a couple? But it seems not. If you are a couple, you are more intimate, right? Or, in fact, you are a special couple. Facing Kawahara Rayoi's eyes that were almost shining, GLUO opened his eyes and rolled his eyes at her. Don't guess blindly, we are friends, partners, and comrades in arms, understand? Shizuki Erita will be on guard tonight. Go to bed early. The most important thing in the world is to be energetic to deal with all difficulties and emergencies. GLUO said an unspoken reminder, and then closed his eyes again, looking like he would not say anything else. TSK. Kawahara Rayoi pouted, but finally listened to GLUO's words, returned to his seat, leaned against the wall, and began to close his eyes to rest. If she doesn't speak, Kawahara Rayoi really looks like a very quiet girl, but once she speaks, her true character is exposed. She obviously likes to act like a very quiet girl all day long, but her real character is completely the opposite. It's very different. What a speechless girl. GLUO thought about these boring things in his heart, and he slowly fell asleep with his eyes closed. I don't know why. GLUO always felt that, since he stepped into this area, he has been a little uneasy. The night began, the reality gradually blurred, and the dream covered everything like the surface of the water. Hull in the endless emptiness, it seemed that there was a strong wind passing by. In the false dream, everything seemed vague and obscure. At this time, GLUO clearly felt that he was dreaming, but unlike usual days, the dream he was in was so real at this time. Whether it was the strong wind or the gravel, it was the same as his real contact. GLUO slowly opened his eyes in the wind and sand, looking at everything in front of him, and lost the ability to speak for a while. It was a dry yellow desert, and the strong wind swept up the yellow boundary line from afar. The wave-like wind and sand rolled forward layer by layer, as if to bury everything in the desert under its body. The sky was starry, and the dark night was boundless. GLUO stood in the middle of the desert, and for a moment he didn't know why he had such a dream, and why it was so real. Here, just when GLUO was standing in the middle of the desert at a loss, he suddenly heard a whisper in the wind. GLUO raised his head and looked around, but couldn't find who was talking. Because he couldn't find the person who spoke, even GLUO himself wondered if everything was just his hallucination, but he held his breath, closed his eyes, and tried to hear that voice again. "We are here." Sure enough, not long after GLUO held his breath, a girl's murmur sounded in his ears again. This time, GLUO did not open his eyes immediately. He listened carefully to the sound, and identified the origin of the sound. As if she understood GLUO's thoughts, the girl's call did not stop immediately. She repeated the call over and over again. GLUO finally determined the direction. He suddenly opened his eyes and rushed in that direction. The yellow sand was all over the sky. GLUO in the dream only felt that his speed was unparalleled. He left footprints in the desert like flying. After running for an unknown period of time, he finally saw a figure standing in the wind and sand in front of him. Although GLUO did not know how far he had run, with the speed and time just now, GLUO felt that it was at least 2 or 3 kilometers, but this figure was standing here. How did the sound get there? Or, is this really just a dream, and has nothing to do with reality? Confused, GLUO stepped forward and approached, while the figure stood there, not moving from beginning to end. GLUO walked to her side and finally saw her. It was a very young girl. Of course, in the boundary between young and young, she was already beyond young, but she looked about 14 or 15 years old. The girl was wearing a black long skirt, which was a bit like a dress, but it wrapped her whole body, and the hem of the skirt fell to the ground, and her feet could not be seen in the yellow sand. There. The girl looked at GLUO in a daze. Her face was beautiful, but terribly pale, and there was no expression on her face. Her eyes were dark, as if absorbing all the light, and no emotion could be seen. "Follow me." The girl repeated something like a puppet. After GLUO approached, she did not express anything. She was just like a puppet, just a guide. She raised her hand and pointed forward, then slowly took a step. GLUO tried to talk to her, but in the end, there was no answer at all. GLUO suddenly felt inexplicably cold. The girl in front of him was not so much dull as like a dead body. The girl led GLUO forward step by step. She seemed to walk very slowly, but she was moving forward as fast as a flash. GLUO even had to use all his strength to catch up with her. She seemed to know GLUO's speed limit, so she let GLUO fall behind her, always keeping a distance that GLUO could not touch her. Of course, GLUO never caught the girl in this chase, and he didn't know how long he had walked, but GLUO followed her, and finally waited for a sand dune, and then, she stopped. Here. The girl stopped at the top of the sand dune. She turned around, and nodded to GLUO. GLUO climbed up the sand dune, and looked forward along the girl's fingertips. At that moment, the yellow gravel filled the whole world, but in the center of this world of gravel, as if it was an ancient monument that was sealed and buried, countless buried figures under the sand dunes revealed more or less skin. In sight, there were corpses everywhere. How many there were, GLUO couldn't tell clearly, nor could he count them clearly. The corpses of more than 1,000 people were buried in the yellow sand. Their corpses seemed to keep the appearance before death, without any drying and corruption. They looked like tender elites. Looking around, there were corpses of girls everywhere. GLUO couldn't see any male corpses, only the corpses of young girls. These girls were in their prime, and none of them were over 20 years old. They were buried in the desert, and the breath of death made them sleep here without moving. This GLUO only felt cold all over. People who had never seen it could not imagine that thousands of bodies of young girls were spread out in front of him. Their expressions before death were still preserved, and they looked like they had just died. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.